Chapter 1153. Qin Wendian had long known that the bloodline in his body was exceedingly tyrannical, but he also understood that as his strength grew, the power hidden within his bloodline would slowly be awakened. This power had been with him since birth, but it didn't mean that he could unleash it as he wished. This was like cultivating an ultimate art of an ancient emperor. For example, God's hand. How strong would the true God's hand be? Qin Wendian basically didn't dare to imagine. He clearly cultivated it, but the power he could tap out from it was only an extremely small portion. He didn't have enough strength to fully tap out the full power of God's hand. It was the same as how he didn't have enough strength to tap out the power of his bloodline. His bloodline was the same as God's hand. It was there, growing stronger and stronger as he grew. Right now, he could only tap out an extremely small portion of its power. The blood sea grew more and more terrifying. It was as though the blood river in the sacred ground had some unwillingness to give up. It surged towards the blood-colored light in Qin Wendian's body, as though the strongest power of the blood sea had been stimulated. That blood-colored halo was still as resplendent as ever, and there was a faint shadow of a demon god within it, devouring the power of the blood sea bit by bit, merging it with his bloodline, becoming a part of it. Gradually, that blood-colored light transformed into the silhouette of Qin Wendian. However, it was also like the silhouette of a demon god, with the appearance of Qin Wendian. It was like he could use the protection of his bloodline. This demon god stood proudly in the air, causing the entire space to be dyed the color of blood. Below him, howling blood-colored vortexes could be seen, wanting to engulf this entire world. This was originally a world of blood. Qin Wendian didn't know what the others had experienced, but he knew that his experience was definitely different from theirs. However, he could faintly sense that this blood sea was formed from droplets of incomparably powerful greater demon blood. Every drop of blood, every piece of bone, and even every inch of skin of a truly terrifying powerhouse contained a frightening amount of power. Immortal kings were the embodiment of laws. One could very well imagine that their blood and bones themselves were the embodiment of laws. In that case, what about even stronger existences? Perhaps, the blood river in this sacred ground was a gift prepared for those greater demons. The tens of thousands of greater demon statues could temper their combat prowess, and the blood river could reforge their bloodlines. Naturally, the prerequisite was that you had to be strong enough. If not, you would end up like some other experts, directly being devoured by the blood river until not even your bones remained. The weak died, and the strong became stronger. Qin Wendian had completely forgotten the passage of time. More and more people stepped into the blood river. By the side of the river, many experts were staring at the silhouettes in the blood river. There were already quite a number of experts who had been devoured by the blood river. This caused some humans and demons who knew that their talents were weak to not dare to step into the blood river. They stared at the silhouettes that were enveloped by the blood river, their bodies glowing with blood-colored light, as well as the greater demons that had transformed into their true forms. Could it be that this blood river was able to strengthen the bloodline of demons? The bloodline of a greater demon would naturally be able to grow stronger. Just like immortal foundations, even if one maintained a fourth-tier king-grade immortal foundation, as their cultivation base grew stronger, the power of their immortal foundation would also grow stronger. It was the same for bloodlines as well. Naturally, immortal foundations could still be upgraded. Bloodlines could be upgraded as well, but because bloodlines were innate, it was much harder to upgrade one's bloodline compared to upgrading one's immortal foundation. Those powerful greater demons, when they come out from the blood river, they would surely become even more terrifying. Many people silently mused. This Tiandao sacred academy that caused a huge commotion in the immortal realms truly didn't disappoint them. However, only humans and demons with the highest talent and will would be able to seize this opportunity. Tiandao's Sacred Academy opened on the 18th year, Tiandao's Sacred Academy on the 21st year. Qin Wendian was still in the blood river, the blood-colored world seemed to have fused into one. Qin Wendian had always been trying to control that strand of truly powerful bloodline energy. However, even after trying for a very long time, he still had no way to do so. That drop of blood might very well be the embodiment of law energy. Only when he truly transformed into law energy would he be able to control it. Right now, although this strand of blood was able to increase his strength once again, Qin Wendian was thinking that if he could take the initiative to control it, he might be able to obtain even greater good fortune. He tried for a very long time, yet he still failed time and time again. Because of the blood river, he could clearly sense the location of that strand of powerful bloodline energy. It felt as though it was within his reach, but when he stretched out his hand, he couldn't touch it. Such a feeling caused him to feel extremely uncomfortable, but he still didn't give up on trying. With the aid of the blood river, if he couldn't borrow that strand of energy, it was very likely that he would need a very long time before he would be able to obtain that strand of energy. When he was strong enough, even if the corresponding bloodline energy became stronger, there would still be a limit to it. For example, although the fiend transformation art as well as the immortal vanquishing swordplay were still able to increase his strength, the aid they provided was no longer comparable to the past. When one was at a lower cultivation realm, they would be able to obtain a power that they couldn't control. Although that power was dangerous, it was still able to grant them a terrifying boost in strength. Such a strong conviction caused Qin Wendian to continue working hard. Even if his head was about to split open, and his will was on the verge of collapsing, he still continued trying, wanting to unravel the illusory shackles of his bloodline, unlocking the secrets within. Even if the purpose of the shackles was to protect him. 22nd year in Tiandao Sacred Academy, the blood in Qin Wendian's body seemed to have fused together, circulating frenziedly and roaring. The power of the blood river could no longer affect Qin Wendian, but he still didn't give up. That terrifying bloodline shackle seemed to have locked onto Qin Wendian's will. He frenziedly struggled free, and today, accompanied by a shattering sound, the power of his bloodline transformed into an uncontrollable blood-colored world, engulfing everything, even rushing into Qin Wendian's sea of consciousness. At this instant, Qin Wendian's body seemed to be expanding. The blood river around him churned violently as a demonic god appeared, enveloping Qin Wendian. He let out a howl of agony. The pain he felt was even more intense compared to the baptism of the blood river in the past. The power of his bloodline wanted to destroy everything. This power gushed into his immortal foundation, causing his perfect saint-grade immortal foundation to tremble. The blood-colored light corroded it as a fearsome immortal might gushed forth. Boundless immortal energy gushed forth, as though his immortal foundation was on the verge of shattering. It's over. I didn't expect he would die here. He's dead for sure. After persisting for so many years, I initially thought he would be able to survive. Who would have thought that he wouldn't be able to endure it in the end? A low-sounding roar rang out. Several experts from the White Tiger people gleamed with coldness. Qin Wendian struggled and howled in the blood river, as though he would die at any moment. Nam Huang Yunxi, who was in the blood river, was jolted awake by Qin Wendian's voice. She had been undergoing the baptism of the blood river not too far away from Qin Wendian. When she saw Qin Wendian's appearance, she moved towards Qin Wendian's body. However, that terrifying energy made it so that she had no way to get close to him. Purgatory originally returned to the shore. It was as though she sensed something. She rushed over from the direction of a statue and directly leaped into the blood river. She transformed into a vermilion bird and sped towards Qin Wendian. The sharp claws of the vermilion bird swiped at Qin Wendian's body. However, that terrifying demonic phantom directly flung her through the air, almost causing her to vomit. Her eyes were filled with anxiety as she tried to rush out once more. However, she was flung back time and time again. Nam Huang Yunxi was similarly anxious. She had no way to get close to Qin Wendian. Only when Qin Wendian's roars gradually died down did he actually faint. However, his body wasn't melted by the blood river. Nam Huang Yunxi arrived before Qin Wendian. She carried him and directly rushed out of the blood river. During these few years, she had already familiarized herself with the power of the blood river. Hence, there was a limit to how much she would be affected by it. Purgatory followed beside her. The two of them supported Qin Wendian's body to the side. At this moment, they discovered that Qin Wentian's strength seemed to have been completely exhausted as he fainted. How can this be? A puzzled expression appeared on Nam Huang Yunxi's face. How tenacious. A figure walked over, exuding a fearsome baleful aura. This was none other than Bai Mao. He stared at Qin Wentian as killing intent flashed in his eyes. The rules of this place do not permit fighting. Purgatory turned, her eyes were like ice as she stared at Bai Mao. Bai Mao's eyes flashed. The Tiandao Sacred Academy was mysterious and incomparably tyrannical. The longer he stayed here, the more respect he had for them. He glanced at Purgatory and Nam Huang Yunxi as he coldly laughed. The two of you will definitely become the female slaves of our White Tiger people. Scram. An expert from the Battle Saint tribe walked over, speaking to Bai Mao. Bai Mao's baleful aura gushed forth as his killing intent surged. However, he still turned and departed, continuing his cultivation. Several days later, Qin Wentian finally woke up. When he opened his eyes, he saw the beautiful countenances of Nam Huang Yunxi and Purgatory as a smile involuntarily appeared on his face. Seeing how Qin Wentian could still smile, Nam Huang Yunxi coldly spoke, "What did you do exactly? You can still smile." The moment I opened my eyes, I was able to admire these two beauties. How can I not smile? Qin Wentian joked. After surviving a great calamity, there's bound to be good fortune waiting for me. I've thought about the possibility of a backlash, but I didn't expect it to be so intense. Seems like good fortune and danger coexist. Luckily, I managed to persevere. My immortal foundation and fleshly body are both not bad. If not, I might really have died in the Blood River this time around. But the benefits I obtained are similarly not little. Although I might still suffer a backlash, at least I know that I won't die. Nam Huang Yunxi glared fiercely at this fellow. At this moment, he actually spoke in such a relaxed manner. It was as though he might do such a thing again in the future. He simply didn't want his life anymore. Although I don't know what you did, you took such a risk. If you really died, have you thought about the people around you? Nam Huang Yunxi spoke. If I die, would Holy Maiden Yunxi be sad? Qin Wentian joked when he heard Nam Huang Yunxi's words. I don't care about your death. I'm just afraid that Princess Qing'e would be sad. Nam Huang Yunxi coldly spoke, her words causing Qin Wentian to roll his eyes. He crawled up, wanting to walk away. You don't want to recover? Do you not want your life anymore? Don't worry, my recovery abilities have always been strong. Also, when I stared at the statue, I only needed to battle with my will. Back then when I fought against these saint beasts, I was defeated time and time again. This time around, I should be able to win. Qin Wentian laughed as he walked to the side of the golden-winged rock. After which, he stared at the statue and entered the battlefield of will. The terrifying golden-winged rock was akin to the sovereign of the heavens, peering down at everything. A human and a demon instantly clashed. Right now, the bloodline in Qin Wentian's body was even more powerful than before, exuding a tyrannical aura. It was as though his demonic attribute was even more terrifying than before. Other than this, his innate techniques and innate techniques of the 8 greater demons were even more proficient. Their might was boundless as he fought against the golden-winged rock, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. The him now could even comprehend the combat style of the golden-winged rock and apply it to himself. Sadly, he was still defeated in the end. Although he was depressed, Qin Wentian wasn't too disappointed. He was very clear on what he obtained from the Blood River. Also, this battle allowed him to understand even more clearly. Not only that, he was very clear in his heart that once he unleashed that innate technique, against demonic beasts at the same level as him, even if it was a golden-winged rock, he would still be able to kill it effortlessly. In the 23rd year of the Tiandao Sacred Academy, Qin Wentian defeated the golden-winged rock. The innate techniques and innate techniques of the golden-winged rock he cultivated were akin to the attacks of a true golden-winged rock, containing boundless might. This year, he began his path of sweeping through all the saint beasts, and also cultivated some of the abilities of these saint beasts. Chapter 1154. During the 24th year of the Tiandao Sacred Academy, none of the greater demons in this sacred ground could defeat Qin Wentian. Today, the bell chimes rang out. The time for the Tao lecture of the Sacred Academy had arrived. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. The experts here all halted their steps. Those who were still cultivating in this sacred ground turned their gazes to the outside. After that, they lifted their feet and walked out. Although this was a sacred ground for tempering oneself, it didn't affect their determination to listen to the Tao lecture of the Sacred Academy. The Tao lecture of the Sacred Academy that was held once every 12 years was undoubtedly a day that none of them could miss out on. During the Tao lecture of the Sacred Academy, many of them broke through, and even if they failed to do so, they still benefited greatly from it. Not only in terms of cultivation, it also had a great impact on their souls and horizons. The Tao lecture of the Sacred Academy was sufficient to allow them to continue comprehending the Tao. It would accompany them on their path of cultivation, helping them along. All of these were formless, invisible, and untouchable. Even for those geniuses who missed out on the first Tao lecture of the Sacred Academy, when they saw the solemn expressions on the faces of these geniuses walking towards the direction of the Sacred Academy, they couldn't help but feel something in their hearts. After that, a voice rang out in their minds, the time limit of 12 years has arrived. The Tao lecture of the Sacred Academy is about to begin. Qin Wentian, Little Rascal, Purgatory, the experts from the Battle Saint tribe and the Namhuang clan all gathered together. Their strengths all had different improvements. Not only for them, during the 24th year of the Sacred Academy, for those who entered the Sacred Academy and didn't die, all of them had great improvements, transforming bit by bit. There were a total of 4 Tiandao Sacred Academies. Right now, there were already close to 10,000 people who joined the Sacred Academy. These people were all the most outstanding Immortal Foundation experts in the immortal realms. Although there were many geniuses who came from faraway places or because of some important matters, it was undeniable that these geniuses in Tiandao Sacred Academy could already represent the most outstanding Immortal Foundation geniuses. At the foot of the misty ancient peak, in front of the staircase, numerous silhouettes stood there. Compared to 12 years ago, the number of people who came here this time was much greater. Naturally, they were the people who had crossed the Immortal Sea to enter the Sacred Academy in the past 12 years. After seeing everything in the Sacred Academy, they all silently cursed themselves for not crossing the Immortal Sea earlier, causing them to miss out on so much time. The time in the Sacred Academy was definitely extremely precious. The Tao lecture in the Sacred Academy is held once every 12 years. In that case, there should be many geniuses who have heard of the Tao lecture in the Sacred Academy. Seeing the solemn expressions on everyone's faces, I believe that this lecture must be extraordinary. I wonder if there's anyone who is willing to dispel the doubts of those who came later. What's so special about the Tao lecture in the Sacred Academy exactly? Someone spoke. 12 years ago, after the Tao lecture in the Sacred Academy, there were some who comprehended for half a year, some who comprehended for a year, and some who comprehended for 3 years. During that lecture, leaving aside the changes in one's state of heart and vision, just based on one's cultivation base alone, out of over 1,000 people, about 100 or so broke through to the next level. The exact number should be even higher. A person replied, his words causing those who missed the lecture to feel deep veneration for him. They knew very well how difficult it was to break through to the Immortal Foundation realm. A single lecture actually resulted in over 100 breakthroughs. How terrifying was this? Also, according to the voice, this was merely an increase in cultivation base. There was also the increase in one's state of heart and vision. The person giving the lecture must be an extraordinary expert, right? Someone mumbled in a low voice. Even in the vast immortal realms, it might be hard to find such a character. A person sighed as he lifted his foot and walked up the stairs. Back then, after the Tao lecture in the Sacred Academy, as expected, these people were filled with even more reverence for the Tao lectures. Even those prideful greater demons were no exception. The people who came later were both curious and silently regretting that they missed this chance. They ascended the stairs, their footsteps were extremely quick, as though they couldn't wait any longer. Qin Wendian also had a solemn expression on his face. He and the other experts from the Namhuang clan also ascended the stairs, but they weren't in a hurry. Back then, Qin Wendian casually chose a seat within the first 10 rows, and after the lecture ended, he chose to sit in the lead seat. The position wasn't that important after all. It was still a statue with 3,000 immortal seats. Those who came later actually didn't have much reverence in their hearts as they directly rushed towards the lead seat. Although this expert was extraordinary, his ending was already determined, he was blasted down. 12 years ago, no one was able to sit in the lead seat. This time around, it was unknown if Jia Nantian and the demonic lion would be able to sit in it. During the Tao lecture in the Sacred Academy, no one was able to sit in the lead seat. Now that the Tao lecture has started again, those who came later actually wanted to sit in the lead seat. What a fool's dream. A cold voice rang out. Speaking of the lead seat, Qin Wendian actually appeared in that position earlier. At the back of the crowd, a voice rang out, causing the gazes of everyone to turn to Qin Wendian. However, this voice wasn't spoken by Qin Wendian or those around him. On the contrary, it was spoken by an expert from the Tenlon Heaven Kingdom who had a grudge against Qin Wendian. Although this sentence sounded like praise, it also pushed Qin Wendian to the limelight of everyone. A 4th-level Immortal Foundation human with extraordinary talent, the amount of time he took to comprehend Tao insights surpassed all the greater demons and humans back then, allowing him to sit in the lead seat. The crowd wouldn't feel reverence for him because of this. On the contrary, they would feel unconvinced and even targeted him. Naturally, there might also be traces of jealousy in their hearts. Regardless of humans or demonic beasts, this was the innate nature of most people. This was especially so for these extremely arrogant heaven-chosen. If they also had a grudge against Qin Wendian, their enmity would naturally be magnified. Hence, Bai Mao's eyes were filled with baleful intent as he glanced at Qin Wendian. Coldly, he spoke, if it wasn't for the 2 women beside him, the person who managed to sit in the lead seat for some unknown reason, might have already turned into a pool of blood a few years ago. Not even his bones would be left behind. For such a person, what kind of luck does he need to be able to sit in that position again? Qin Wendian naturally understood which time Bai Mao was referring to. If there wasn't the rules of the Sacred Academy, Qin Wendian believed that Bai Mao definitely wouldn't give up such a good opportunity to deal with him. In that case, killing white tigers, roasting white tiger meat, and battling with you is also luck on my side. On the life and death arena, the white tiger people spared no effort to take my life, yet 2 of them were slaughtered. It seems like my luck is really not bad. Qin Wendian spoke calmly and sarcastically. Instantly, the white tiger roared, and a violent baleful aura blasted out. However, in front of the 3,000 seats of the Sacred Academy, he still didn't dare to be impudent. Pairs of cold eyes fell on Qin Wendian. That battle on the life and death arena was the eternal humiliation of the white tiger people. Your talent isn't bad, especially your combat prowess. However, killing 2 ordinary white tigers isn't something you can be proud of. If it wasn't for the fact that there were some people protecting you, in this Sacred Academy, given your arrogant attitude and your low cultivation base, there would be no space for you to survive. Hence, in the future, you better not let me see you feasting on demonic beast meat. Even if it's those fools from the white tiger people, I still can't stand it. An arrogant voice rang out. Beside the golden-winged great rock Jia Nantian, a young man with golden eyes could be seen. He was very arrogant, so arrogant that his eyes didn't even bother to look at Qin Wendian. Instead, he was staring at the 3,000 seats in front of him. Also, his cultivation base was very high, he was a 9th-level Immortal Foundation expert of the Tianping people. From a certain perspective, he did indeed have the qualifications to teach Qin Wendian a lesson. Because he was strong, he believed that there wouldn't be too many among the 2,000+ people in this Sacred Academy who could defeat him. This was especially so after experiencing the power of the Sacred Academy for so many years. He had grown even stronger and could faintly sense that he was about to touch upon the threshold of the Immortal Foundation realm. A single sentence from him not only threatened Qin Wendian, he also insulted the White Tiger people for being a bunch of fools. This wasn't an ordinary level of arrogance. Qin Wendian could understand the unhappiness of the other party. Because, he was a demon, and as for Qin Wendian, he had roasted a greater white tiger in front of these greater demons. However, Qin Wendian's understanding didn't mean that he agreed. Hence, he coldly replied, I believe that when the White Tiger people used humans as slaves, spitting out vulgar words and saying that they wanted to kill humans, you wouldn't be unhappy, right? Naturally. That great rock turned his gaze over, staring at Qin Wendian. His golden eyes gleamed with sharpness, causing the eyes of everyone to flicker. Qin Wendian had already offended the White Tiger people. If he offended the Tianping people as well, things wouldn't end well for him. Especially in this sacred academy, the strength of the Tianping people seemed to be even stronger compared to the White Tiger people. I'm sure there are many things that you don't like. Qin Wendian laughed. That's right. For example, 12 years ago when you sat in the lead seat, I didn't like it at all. You are not worthy of that position. His gaze turned to the golden-winged great rock before him, Jia Nantian. He was the king of the Tianping people of this generation. In his eyes, no human or demon would be more suitable than Jia Nantian for that position. Initially, I had no intention of sitting in that position, but the most suitable position just so happened to appear there. This originally wasn't something I wanted, it was something that happened naturally. Even if I ended up sitting there, there would naturally be a reason for me to do so. If you feel that I'm not worthy, what does that count for? Qin Wendian asked. Is it merely my opinion? That expert faintly spoke. Qin Wendian turned his gaze to everyone. The 3,000 immortal seats were right ahead, yet no one was in a hurry to sit on them. After all, they knew that it wasn't so easy to sit on them. As for those who missed out on the opportunity 12 years ago, they needed to see the situation more clearly. Countless gazes landed on Qin Wendian. The experts around Qin Wendian all had expressions of anger on their faces, but this didn't change the minds of everyone. Indeed, from the perspective of many humans and demonic beasts, no matter how strong Qin Wendian's combat prowess was, he still didn't have the qualifications to sit on the lead seat. Qin Wendian suddenly laughed. Sometimes, even if you don't want to fight, there would still be people who would force you to. This fight wasn't merely to fight for an immortal seat, it was also to fight for pride. He slowly walked forward, moving towards the 3,000 immortal seats. With his back facing everyone, he spoke, I originally had no intentions of competing for the lead seat. However, since you feel that I'm not worthy, I want to see for myself if I'm worthy or not. Although this might make you unhappy, but whether you are unhappy or not, it's none of my business. As he spoke, Qin Wendian gradually walked towards the lead seat. The experts from Tianping people wanted to move, but Jia Nantian blocked them. Everyone stared at Qin Wendian, as though they wanted to see how he would make a fool out of himself. 12 years ago, many people wanted to sit on the lead seat but failed. Today, if I were to walk up and sit down, many of you would definitely say that today, 12 years later, I'm not the only one who has the qualifications to sit on the lead seat. However, I don't mind what you all think. Because of your pride, I just want to tell you that when I want this seat, it would no longer have anything to do with you. Qin Wendian indifferently stated as he walked to the leader's seat. How arrogant was his voice. After he finished speaking, he stepped onto the leader's seat. Chapter 1155. Qin Wendian stood on the lead seat. He was the first person to do so. Not only that, he was the first to sit on this seat 12 years ago. Overestimating your capabilities. An expert from the Tianping people beside Jia Nantian mocked. 12 years ago, no one could sit on this seat. Even their king Jia Nantian couldn't sit on it. Could it be that this young man could be compared to Jia Nantian or the devil lion from 12 years ago? Let alone humans, even demons, I've never seen someone so arrogant before. An expert from the White Tiger people coldly spoke. With such arrogance, how much humiliation would it be when he is forced down from the seat later? Even if he is forced down, he is still a heaven chosen who killed your white tiger people, jumping 2 levels to fight against your white tiger people without losing. As for you guys, you don't even dare to retort after being insulted by others. In fact, you guys don't even have the courage to fight for the lead seat. I really wonder where you guys got the courage to humiliate him. The white tiger people might have strong defenses, but the thickest part of them should be their faces. A holy maiden from the Nam Huang clan coldly spoke. Both sides were still arguing with each other, exuding a cold intent. However, the gazes of everyone were all on the lead seat. The astral light from the seat enveloped Qin Wentian as a painting appeared in the air. Within the painting, Qin Wentian stood on a vast land, resisting against the might of the heavenly Tao. He was as tiny and insignificant as an ant. They involuntarily thought back to the scene 12 years ago when Jia Nantian fought against the might of the heavenly Tao. The great rock flapped its wings, wanting to slash apart the heavenly Tao. Sadly, after a terrifying battle, it still failed in the end. Today, the tiny and insignificant Qin Wentian really wanted to accomplish what Jia Nantian failed to do back then. Right now, Qin Wentian's state of mind was no longer focused on his true body. A strand of his will descended upon the space within the painting, causing the might of the heavenly Tao to crush down. Who under the heavens would be able to resist? However, right now, Qin Wentian's strength was also incomparably tyrannical. As long as he willed it, he could transform his body into law energy. Boom! Qin Wentian soared up into the air, his entire body flowing with divine light, illuminating the world. He transformed into law energy, and with a lift of his hand, he could destroy the heavens and earth. The hand of a divinity was like the vault of the heavens, wanting to shake the heavenly Taos. But under the power of his law energy, all lives could only grovel in submission. Resplendent light flashed in the sky. Qin Wentian actually transformed into an incomparably gigantic golden-winged great rock. His wings slashed towards the heavenly Tao, his wings seemed to be able to slash apart the heavens. When his claws slashed out, countless golden-winged great rocks slashed out, clashing against the law energy of the heavenly Tao. In this entire space, only the arrogance of the great rocks could be heard. The eyes of that expert from the sky rock race flashed with sharpness. Although Qin Wentian had the power to shatter the heavens, he still had no way to break apart the heavenly Taos. Qin Wentian's treasured arts were all extremely powerful and could even shake the heavenly Taos. Yet, he still had no way to break apart the heavenly Taos. Only by truly experiencing it would one know how strong it was. Qin Wentian stood on the ground. He transformed into a million-zhang giant, towering between heaven and earth. Just by standing there, he was the law energy. The boundless power of heaven and earth was at his disposal. Within his body, a peerless demonic light shone, enveloping his body. Under the power of the heavenly Tao, no law energy could escape the fate of being destroyed. If one wanted to break through the heavens, the only way was to break through bolder and stronger than the heavenly Tao. Qin Wentian's entire body glowed with a dark golden light as he transformed into a god of destruction. Demonic light enveloped him as the destructive might he exuded rose to the extreme, causing the entire sky to darken. The silhouettes of numerous greater demons appeared in this world, radiating boundless light as they exuded destruction. In the painting, the destructive energy of heaven and earth towered up into the sky, blasting towards the heavenly might. In an instant, the scene of the end of the world appeared. The heavens and earth split apart as darkness appeared. The heavenly might was broken apart, and after that, an incomparably resplendent starry sky appeared above the heavenly might. Qin Wentian's body was bathed in astral light. The painting vanished, and the astral light from the lead seat returned to a state of calmness. Qin Wentian quietly sat there. Before the 3,000 immortal seats, the experts were all silent. It was unknown if it was because of the battle in the painting, or because Qin Wentian was able to sit so stably on the lead seat. 12 years ago, there was no one in the lead seat. There was no way for greater demons to sit on it. 12 years later, the human Wuxiu, Qin Wentian, with his cultivation base at the 4th level of Immortal Foundation, sat on the lead seat and listened to the lecture of the Sacred Academy. Because of your pride. I only want to tell you that when I want this seat, it has nothing to do with you guys anymore. Many people recalled the voice of Qin Wentian earlier. Staring at his back, they silently mused that Qin Wentian was truly an arrogant person. Naturally, he did have the qualifications to be arrogant. The experts of the White Tiger people turned ashen. That young man who feasted on the White Tiger meat once again used his actions to humiliate them. The despicable human in their mouths had once again slapped the faces of the White Tiger people. The experts beside Jia Nantian also had dark expressions on their faces as they stared at this scene with disbelief. To think that Qin Wentian actually sat on the lead seat. As for those experts from the Tenlon Heaven Kingdom who wanted to sow discord earlier, they all felt extremely angry in their hearts. They initially wanted to see Qin Wentian make a fool of himself, causing more people to target him. But who would have thought that Qin Wentian would retaliate in such a domineering manner? This caused their thoughts to seem extremely dirty. Over 2,000 experts all had different expressions on their faces. Jia Nantian stepped out. His improvement during these 12 years wasn't small and he initially wanted to try and become the lead seat again. However, he didn't expect that he would encounter such a ridiculous situation. His tribesmen angered Qin Wentian, causing him to go and fight for the lead seat. And as for Qin Wentian, he really succeeded. In that case, since the lead seat was already occupied, he could only fight for the second row, just like before. His silhouette flashed as he stepped onto the left seat of the second row. The demonic lion also flashed and stepped onto the right seat of the second row. Their seats were exactly the same as 12 years ago. It was just that right now, there was an additional person in front of them. The experts all stepped out one after another. The competition for the immortal seats was as intense as ever. Out of the 3,000 seats, over 2,000 had already been occupied. Gradually, everyone quietened down as they sat on their seats, waiting for the lecture of the Sacred Academy to begin. Closing their eyes, astral light flashed as their consciousnesses appeared in the starry space. That ethereal figure once again appeared before everyone. Everyone sat there and bowed slightly, indicating their respect. Today, I'm very gratified that the lead seat is occupied. That ethereal voice smiled. After that, he continued, is the heavens higher than the humans, or is the humans higher than the heavens? This voice was too profound. This sudden sentence caused everyone to sink into silence. No one dared to speak. The lead seat contended against the heavens. Could it be that he wanted to ask if the heavens were taller than the humans, or was the humans taller than the heavens? The so-called humans naturally included all the greater demons. They were all seated here in human form. Is there no one who can answer? That figure asked again. What is the heavens? Jia Nantian suddenly asked. The heavens are the heavens. The ethereal voice laughed, but didn't explain. I've cultivated in a particle world before and I also know that in the surroundings of the immortal realms, there are countless particle worlds. The life forms in each particle world, because their cultivation bases are weak, they all feel that the heavens are supreme and unreachable. However, for those who enter the immortal realm, they can actually break through the restrictions of particle worlds and enter the immortal realms. Hence, I feel that the heavens are nothing but an illusory thing in our imaginations. It originally doesn't exist, or maybe, it's just the supreme law of a certain world. Qin Wentian slowly spoke. If this is the case, your cultivation base is weaker than the heavens, but the heavens are naturally taller than the humans. If your cultivation base is stronger than the heavens, the humans are taller than the heavens. Continue. The ethereal voice laughed as he stared at Qin Wentian. Senior said 12 years ago that stellar martial cultivators have to comprehend, use, transform into, and create laws. If the heavens itself is a type of order, humans should be able to learn from it when they are weak. But when they reach a certain level of strength, they should be able to change from learning to breaking, or creating. Qin Wentian nodded. What you said is correct. The ethereal voice laughed. In truth, since you described the heavens as a type of law, there are two different concepts, broad and narrow. If we look at it from a broad perspective, the countless worlds in the starry space all have their own laws of operation. Could it be that these laws were created by humans? In that case, were humans the ones who created the worlds, or were the worlds the ones who gave birth to humans? Junior has no idea. Qin Wendian shook his head and smiled bitterly. This question was too profound. Most probably, only those who stood at the peak of the boundless starry space would have the qualifications to explore it. I have no idea as well. The ethereal figure smiled. However, it's not bad that you're able to understand so much. I'll take you to a place to experience it. Perhaps you'll be able to gain a deeper understanding. Having more of your own insights will be beneficial to your future cultivation. Beams of intense astral light enveloped everyone. That beam of light seemed to originate from the depths of the starry space. They only felt their wills trembling, as though their minds were about to explode. Even their bodies were trembling violently. The light flashed, and in the vast starry space, numerous silhouettes could be seen floating there. At this moment, the hearts of everyone pounded violently as they stared at the gigantic creature before them. That was a greater demon that shone with boundless light, a terrifying great rock that spanned across the heavens and earth, radiating resplendent light. No one knew how gigantic it was exactly. They could only see it clearly when they stood in the air. They also understood that although the great rock was just inches away from them, it was still extremely far away. The body of the great rock shone with boundless light. Each beam of light was a great rock that flowed unceasingly. The aura emanating from it caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. It was as though just a single strand of energy from the great rock would be enough to annihilate them. Is this a constellation? Someone mumbled in a low voice. As the light flashed, the pain they felt earlier appeared again. In the next instant, their consciousness returned to their original positions, but there were still huge waves of shock in their hearts. They inclined their heads and stared at the boundless starry space. Chapter 1156. Constellation. At this moment, a voice rang out in the minds of everyone. Was that the constellation they condensed their astral souls to cultivate on? In this boundless starry space, there were countless constellations. Even though they were separated by an immeasurably great distance, they could still sense the power of the constellations and absorb the astral energy for their own use. However, only now did they understand how weak the astral energy they absorbed was when compared to the astral souls they had condensed. As their strength grew stronger, they would be able to absorb more astral energy bit by bit. Did humans create the world, or did the world create humans? Qin Wendian mumbled in a low voice. In that case, is it the astral souls that create the constellations, or is it the constellations that create the astral souls? As the sound of his voice faded, the gazes of everyone turned to Qin Wendian. Such a brazen thought truly caused their hearts to tremble. They naturally understood what Qin Wendian meant. How similar were constellations and astral souls? Astral souls were formed from constellations, and as the astral souls grew stronger and stronger, they would grow more and more familiar with the constellation. If there was a day when an astral soul was as strong as a constellation, wouldn't their astral soul be a constellation as well? Such a brazen thought caused them to once again feel how tiny and insignificant they were. Even for those at the peak of immortal foundation, when they stared at the constellations below the starry sky, other than gazing up, what else could they do? One day, when you all stand at the peak of cultivation, would you also be as resplendent as the constellations in the night sky, radiating boundless radiance that cascaded down onto the world, representing the law and order of the world? The ethereal voice slowly rang out. Everyone inclined their heads and stared at the starry sky. The brightest constellations in the sky were like supreme experts standing there. They sank into contemplation, and as they contemplated, the ethereal voice didn't stop. It continued quietly, transmitting its voice into their minds. Every sentence, every voice seemed to be able to cause them to sink into contemplation. In fact, it even caused a resonance in the depths of their hearts. From big to small, from constellations to astral souls, from astral souls to cultivation. This voice unceasingly seeped into their ears, causing them to be intoxicated, unable to extricate themselves. Their eyes had long since closed, as they entered the state of cultivation. Enlightenment was difficult, and it was a situation that cultivators yearned for. A single moment of enlightenment was better than many years of cultivation. However, when the Sacred Academy was lecturing, this ethereal voice was able to send people into a state of enlightenment again and again. Such a heaven-defying method was rarely seen in the world. Even the geniuses of the top powers and their elders did not have such an ability. The people of the world treasured the chance of the Sacred Academy appearing in the immortal realms so much, sending their juniors to the Sacred Academy for cultivation. No major powers dared to underestimate the Sacred Academy. From this, one could see the status of the Tiandao Sacred Academy in the immortal realms. Although the Tiandao Sacred Academy hasn't appeared in the immortal realms for many years, it still possessed an incomparably terrifying influence. This kind of influence was naturally a reputation that had been accumulated since ancient times. Once every 12 years, the Sacred Academy lectured twice, sending everyone who listened to the lecture of the Sacred Academy into a state of enlightenment. The ethereal voice was like the melody of the great Tao, like the evening drum and morning bell, ringing in the hearts of the cultivators, as well as in their minds, opening the door to cultivation for them, allowing them to see further, helping them to walk even further in the future. When everyone was in a state of enlightenment, the vast Sacred Academy actually started to change. The entire structure of the Sacred Academy, under the illumination of the boundless radiance, was changing bit by bit. If one stood at the peak of the Sacred Academy and gazed into the distance, they should be able to see 4 Sacred Academies floating in the air. These 4 Sacred Academies were very similar. They floated in the air with ancient stairways, exuding an ethereal and holy aura. In the center of these 4 Sacred Academies, there was a boundlessly vast region where one could faintly see a world. This was none other than the sky-connecting realm. It was just that at this moment, the people cultivating in the 4 Sacred Academies still had no idea that the 4 Sacred Academies had appeared. They were still immersed in their cultivation. 27th year of the Sacred Academy. In the Sacred Academy where Qin Wentian was in, many people gradually woke up. The king of the Tianping people, the golden-winged great rock, Jia Nantian, broke through to the 9th level of immortal foundation. Golden light illuminated the sky as the shadow of the golden-winged great rock appeared in the air, causing many experts to turn their gazes to Jia Nantian. The king of the Tianping people, the golden-winged great rock, had broken through to the 9th level of immortal foundation. Most probably, no one in this Sacred Academy would be able to stand against him. Even if the 4 Sacred Academies joined forces, there wouldn't be many who could stand against him. After breaking through, Jia Nantian was still cultivating, as though he wasn't willing to wake up. In the same year, the demonic lion also broke through, stepping into the 9th level of immortal foundation. Naturally, other than them, there were over 100 other experts who also broke through. However, the commotion caused by their breakthroughs wasn't as great as the 2 of them. Because, based on the rankings, the 2 of them were seated in the 2nd row. And based on their cultivation bases, they broke through from the 8th level to the 9th level. It was easy to break through to a lower level, but it was extremely difficult to break through to a higher level. If one didn't have any good fortune, it would be extremely common for them to be stuck at the same level for over 1,000 years at the 8th level. Everyone understood how rare it was for them to have the opportunity to break through to the next level at the Tiandao Sacred Academy. For those who missed out on the first lecture in the Sacred Academy, they all sighed in regret. They finally understood how rare it was for them to have a lecture in the Sacred Academy. For the 28th year in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, many experts knew that they had no way to improve further. Some of them walked out of the Sacred Academy and stared into the distance. To their shock, they discovered that there were 3 other Sacred Academies appearing in the air. For the 30th year in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, Qin Wentian broke through and stepped into the 5th level of Immortal Foundation. He consecutively gave 2 lectures in the Sacred Academy and broke through to the next level. His cultivation base originally wasn't very high and wouldn't attract much attention. but because he was seated in the lead seat, he was extremely conspicuous. However, this year, the number of people seated in the seats in the Tiandao Sacred Academy was already dwindling. Many people woke up and left, but Jia Nantian and the demonic lion didn't leave. They were still cultivating, and other than them, there were hundreds of others who were still cultivating. Some were awake, while others were still in the midst of comprehension. For the 32nd year in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, only Qin Wendian remained. At the same time, many people discovered that the sacred academies had changed. The 4 sacred academies were interconnected, and the sky-connecting realm was no longer an illusory world. One could enter it with their true self. It was a world of combat. However, the sky-connecting realm was still enveloped by the law, and one couldn't borrow any external power upon entering. Also, at the instant one was killed, they would be teleported out of the sky-connecting realm. Most probably, the sacred academies didn't want to see a large number of cultivators from the sacred academy dying because of competition. Other than this, they also discovered that in the 4 locations where the Tao lectures were held, there was actually a formless energy within. After one ascended the stairway, there was no way to return. When Little Rascal, Purgatory and the others wanted to return to see Qin Wendian, they discovered that they had no way to ascend the stairway. This caused many to speculate that could it be that the sacred academies would only hold Tao lectures twice? In addition, there were rumors circulating around the sacred academies that the sky-connecting realm wasn't just on the first level. There were people who personally witnessed a supreme ranker on the supreme might rankings vanishing from the Tongtian Heaven Stone. In the sacred academies, there were over 10,000 experts. Among them, the human Wuxiu was the most. The number of demons was far less than the human Wuxiu. After all, the number of demons from the desolate 10,000 mountain range of the northern regions was simply too little. Also, the immortal realms belonged to the human Wuxiu after all. Only a few powerful demonic races could stand tall in the immortal realms. Right now, the Sacred Academy was even more lively compared to the past. However, Qin Wendian was still quietly cultivating on his immortal seat. The Sacred Academy was incomparably quiet. He was the only one there, staring at the statue. Although many years have passed, he still hadn't awoken from his trance. 33rd year of the Sacred Academy. The geniuses of the immortal realms have already been in the immortal realms for 33 years. Outside the Sacred Academy, there were changes happening every day. However, to those powers that stood at the peak, the immortal realms were the same as before. Because, standing at their peak, the deaths and deaths of countless lives, as well as the replacement of countless peak powers, were like raindrops splashing into a river. Although there would be splashes, there was no difference. The gazes of the immortal realms were still on the Sacred Academy. The appearance of the Sacred Academy had the possibility to change the future of the immortal realms. Today, outside the Sacred Academy, a beautiful figure appeared on the platform used for the examination of talent. This figure was incomparably beautiful, but when she released her astral souls, many people were disappointed. However, her immortal foundation wasn't bad, it was a 4th-tier king-grade immortal foundation. Maybe in the eyes of many, she could already be considered a heaven's chosen. But in the perspective of the entire immortal realms, it was still far from enough to enter the Sacred Academy. In terms of beauty, this woman is truly as beautiful as a celestial maiden from the heavens. However, her cultivation base is only at the first level of immortal foundation. Although her talent is good, it isn't outstanding. She is still far from being qualified to enter the Sacred Academy. Someone sighed. And as expected, the shadow on the platform shook his head. You should know that given the talent you displayed, you don't have the qualifications to enter the Sacred Academy. Junior understands. It's just that Junior still begs Senior to give me a chance. The young woman bowed, her beautiful face was filled with sincerity. Your innate talent isn't strong, you should have undergone some form of transformation. You must have had some good fortune and might have some accomplishments in the future. But even so, it is still insufficient for you to enter the Sacred Academy. Go on. The shadow spoke. This beautiful young woman was like the darling of the world. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to help her. Even for this expert in charge of the Sacred Academy, although he didn't agree, he still said a few more words. "Senior, please grant me my wish." The young woman still refused to leave. She bowed, her eyes filled with an intense obsession. "Why must you be so stubborn? There are still trials ahead. If you can't enter the Sacred Academy, you might even be trapped here for many years." That expert spoke. "Junior's husband has entered the Sacred Academy for over 30 years. I know that my talent and cultivation base are far inferior compared to him. Hence, I bitterly cultivated, not wanting to be left behind too far. I hope that I can accompany him by his side. The Sacred Academy is rumored to be a holy ground for cultivation. Firstly, I can accompany my husband, and secondly, I can raise my strength. Hence, after my immortal foundation stabilized, I immediately rushed here. Since there are still trials ahead, I beg Senior to let me try. If I fail, I would have no regrets." "Who is your husband?" that expert asked. The young woman's immortal sense surged as a projection appeared. After that expert saw it, he waved his hand and spoke, "Go on in." "Many thanks, Senior." The young woman bowed and walked towards the entrance of the Sacred Academy. Chapter 1157. Year 35 of Tiandao's Sacred Academy. Qin Wentian, who was sitting on the immortal seat, opened his eyes. His gaze was calm and deep, his aura was retracted. He didn't expect that this cultivation session would last for 11 years. There were no other people in the surroundings. Out of the 3,000 immortal seats, he was the only one remaining. Finally, the cultivation session has ended. An ethereal voice drifted over. Qin Wentian nodded. "Senior, the lecture of the Tao in the Sacred Academy is held once every 12 years. The next 12 years will soon arrive. Are you still able to come here to listen to the lecture?" "No." The ethereal voice rang out. "Going too far is as bad as not going far enough. 2 lectures on the Tao, you guys gained enlightenment twice. This should be enough to accompany you for many years and would be of help to your cultivation. Right now, the rules of the Tiandao Sacred Academy have changed. You can go down the mountain to take a look. If there's another lecture, we will naturally inform you. If not, just let nature take its course." Qin Wentian nodded lightly, feeling a little pity. Had the rules of the Tiandao Sacred Academy changed? He stood up and walked down the immortal seat. He turned his head and stared into the distance, only to see 3 other sacred academies floating in the air. He naturally knew what they were. Since the 4 sacred academies could see each other, they should be connected to each other. "When I entered the Sacred Academy, I once went to an ancient castle to comprehend the Tao. May I ask Senior where that place is?" Qin Wentian asked. "You can see the entrance of the 4 academies from the ancient castle. The ancient castle is naturally located in the center of the 4 academies." The ethereal voice rang out. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed as he stared at the center of the 4 academies. Over there seemed to be a world of its own, the sky-connecting realm. The ancient castle is in the sky-connecting realm? Qin Wentian felt somewhat puzzled. There didn't seem to be any ancient castles in the sky-connecting realm. The sky-connecting realm. If you can reach the heavens, you will be able to create a world of your own. Go on. That voice rang out. Qin Wentian silently comprehended. After that, he bowed to the statue and spoke, "Junior bids my farewell." After saying this, he walked down the ancient mountain stairs step by step. When he turned back to look at the Sacred Academy again, a mysterious aura enveloped it. It was likely that it would be difficult to go back up. He lifted his foot and walked forward, his steps filled with determination. Unknowingly, he had already broken through to the 5th level of Immortal Foundation. His combat prowess was many times stronger compared to when he first entered the Sacred Academy. Even in the Sacred Academy where demon-level geniuses were as common as the clouds, he wasn't as weak as when he first entered the Sacred Academy. The rules of the Sacred Academy have truly changed. Qin Wentian could sense a formless law energy enveloping this world. He suddenly had a sense of comprehension. Most probably, in the current sacred academy, immortal ranked weapons and treasures were no longer of any use. The rules of the sky-connecting realm had also changed. It was no longer necessary to enter through the sacrificial altar. Instead, one could directly enter with their true body, directly entering the central region of the sky-connecting realm. In addition, there were 4 exits leading to the 4 sacred academies, located in 4 different directions. After the people of each sacred academy entered, they would be able to head to the Tongtian Heaven Stone and view the Supreme Might rankings. At this moment, Qin Wendian stood on the Tongtian Heaven Stone. Before him, there were over 10 figures engraved on the Supreme Might rankings. Not only were there incomparably tyrannical characters of the sky-connecting realm, there were also characters who had reached the pinnacle of their cultivation bases. For those who were at the same level as them, they had never been defeated before. Their portraits were also engraved on the Supreme Might rankings. The sky-connecting realm, if one could connect to the heavens, they would be able to create a world of their own. Qin Wendian comprehended this sentence and faintly understood some things. After observing for some time, Qin Wendian directly left this place and found the exit of another sacred academy. After so many years, he missed Qing'er, he missed Qingcheng, and he also missed Jun Mengchen. Qingcheng wasn't in the sacred academy, but Qing'er, Jun Mengchen, Zi Qingxian, and the others were all cultivating in the sacred academy. Their improvements should also be very great, right? The sky-connecting realm was very vast, and the 4 sacred academies were also very vast. It wasn't easy to find a single person. After walking to another sacred academy, Qin Wendian saw many experts contending against each other, and there were even group battles. Most probably, this was a group of people who were equally proud and arrogant. It was naturally impossible for them to avoid sparring. Other than this, he also discovered that the sacred academy he was in before was the one with the least number of people. The number of people in this sacred academy was clearly much more compared to the sacred academy he was in. Naturally now, the sacred academy was still the sacred academy. The 4 sacred academies were all part of the Tiandao Sacred Academy. There was no distinction between the sacred academy and the sacred academy. Qin Wendian didn't know that during these years of cultivation, many things had happened. The expert from the Tianping people, Jia Gu, was unhappy that Qin Wendian had ascended to the first seat and had a conflict with Namhuang Yunxi and Little Rascal, injuring a few of them. The White Tiger people also had a grudge against Qin Wendian and the Namhuang clan. Hence, they had fought against the Namhuang clan and the Battle Saint tribe many times. Other than this, because Leiba hated Chu Qingyi for claiming that she was Qin Wendian's woman back then, he felt humiliated. His cultivation base grew stronger and stepped into the 8th level of Immortal Foundation, becoming unexcelled in the world. He even said that he wanted to humiliate the woman Qin Wendian liked, Princess Qing'er. He even tried to cause trouble for Jun Mengchen several times but was stopped by the disciples of the Heavenly Talisman realm. Both sides fought several times. Qing'er suffered many harassment. Her personality was cold and she didn't like to speak much. But even so, there were still some extremely arrogant people who claimed that Qing'er would be his woman. They even said that they wanted their elders to head to the Evergreen Kingdom to propose marriage. Other than these people that Qin Wendian was familiar with, there were also many conflicts between the other experts. Qin Wendian strolled through the Sacred Academy. He didn't meet Jun Mengchen and the others. Instead, he met some people he was familiar with. These people were people he had only met once before. And just this one time, when they stood before Qin Wendian, their eyes were filled with sharpness and coldness. This was especially so for that beautiful maiden clad in a red dress. The long dress accentuated her figure perfectly, making her seem exceptionally beautiful. However, her eyes were so cold that it caused people to feel a chill in their hearts. The matter in the past was a misunderstanding. Qin Wendian stared at that maiden as he spoke. These people were experts from the Shooting Sun Kingdom. Back then in the sky-connecting realm, he was tricked by Monk Bujie and he had to help Bujie to resolve the situation. I'm acquainted with you. When you entered the Sacred Academy, your immortal foundation was already perfect. You were together with that lecherous monk and you even did such a thing to Chu Qingyi before abandoning her. I can imagine what sort of person you are. The maiden spoke coldly, her words causing Qin Wendian to shake his head and smile bitterly. A single sentence from that woman, Chu Qingyi, not only did she hurt herself, she also destroyed his reputation. Sometimes, what you see and hear might not be the truth. In truth, I also wish to find Monk Bujie and give him a good beating. If you find him, you must be more ruthless when you do so. As for Chu Qingyi, the punishment I gave her was definitely not too excessive. I wouldn't do such things to her as you imagined. I have a woman I like and she is currently in the Sacred Academy. Qin Wendian spoke. Are you referring to Qing'er from the Evergreen Kingdom? That maiden asked, her words causing Qin Wendian to start. Seems like this maiden had investigated him before. Since you know about Qing'er, you should know that I'm not lying. Qin Wendian could sense that although the eyes of this maiden were cold, there were no malicious intents in them. She also didn't have any thoughts of killing him. Most probably, she just wanted to teach him a lesson. If that monk Bujie really did something to her, this was something he ought to do. Hence, Qin Wendian was extremely polite. Who knows what you guys are thinking? The maiden's tone was filled with unwillingness, especially when she thought of that damnable monk. However, let me remind you out of goodwill. Even if the person you like is Princess Qing'er, it's still hard to say if she would be able to become your woman. The maiden spoke, her words causing Qin Wendian's eyes to flash. He smiled, I've been to the Evergreen Kingdom before. I believe there shouldn't be too many twists and turns in this matter. You are truly confident, but you should know that as long as the dust hasn't settled, there will always be variables. The maiden continued, there aren't many peak-level beauties in the immortal realms, and those with outstanding talents are even rarer. Just so coincidentally, many of these beauties are in the Sacred Academy, and the young men in the Sacred Academy are all the most outstanding geniuses in the immortal realms. You should also know that for someone like Jidi's disciple and the daughter of the Evergreen Immortal Emperor, there would definitely be many geniuses who have their eyes on her. It's only normal for them to have their eyes on Qing'er. My judgment has always been good. Qin Wendian smiled. Even Chu Qingyi had many pursuers, let alone Qing'er. The maiden discovered that he didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, he seemed to be somewhat arrogant instead. She couldn't help but to silently muse that this young man before her was truly an extremely arrogant young man. He didn't seem to care about his competitors at all. Maybe, what Chu Qingyi said might not be true. Pride was something that wasn't easy to disguise. Especially when he was facing her. If you knew who those people are, you might not be so confident. The maiden smiled. Let me remind you again out of goodwill. Not long ago, there was an arranged battle in this Sacred Academy, and you should be acquainted with the main characters. There's Leba from the Thunder God Hall and another young man named Jun Mengchen. Qin Wendian's gaze froze as he asked, where is it? I can bring you there. That maiden spoke. After that, her silhouette flickered as she sped away. Qin Wendian's silhouette flashed as he followed after her. Why are you helping me? Qin Wendian walked to the side of the maiden as he asked. Do you think I'm helping you? The maiden smiled as she stared at Qin Wendian. Staring at her gaze, Qin Wendian seemed to understand what she meant. Most probably, Jun Mengchen would be the weaker one in this arranged battle. And if he went there himself, given the hatred Leba had for him, there was no need for this maiden to do anything. Qin Wendian didn't say anything more. He followed closely after the maiden as they flew towards the location of the arranged battle. In a vast ancient palace, the geniuses of the various powers were all staring in the same direction. In the airspace above the ancient palace, experts from both camps were currently facing each other. In addition, many of them were injured. Evidently, they had already clashed once. Jun Mengchen was currently fighting. His perfect immortal foundation as well as his powerful combat prowess clearly displayed his talent. He domineeringly suppressed his opponents, exuding magnificence through the generations. There were many spectators at the side. They were all clad in luxurious robes and exuded an air of supremacy. There was one among them, although he was very young, his eyes gleamed with an intense battle intent as he stared at Jun Mengchen's battle. Was it the aura of an emperor? He stepped out as the might of his immortal foundation gushed forth. His entire body radiated an incomparably tyrannical aura, as though he was the ruler of the world, the human emperor of heaven and earth. Boom! Jun Mengchen defeated his opponent with a single punch. After that, the young man walked towards Jun Mengchen and blasted out with his palms. It was as though an ancient emperor had appeared in the world. A boundless might engulfed the heavens and earth, directly blasting towards Jun Mengchen. Jun Mengchen's countenance stiffened. He lifted his palms to defend, but the energy of the heavens and earth gushed forth, exuding boundless might. Despicable. An expert stepped out, wanting to act. However, the might of thunder descended from the sky. Lei Ba's body was like a god of thunder, unsurpassable. Chapter 1158. A disciple from the heavenly talisman realm, Tang Sheng, entered the immortal Qianbian Gate and entered the sacred academy. His talent was very high and his cultivation base was very high, at the peak of immortal foundation. He entered the sacred academy because he wanted to break through to the immortal king realm. Any disciple from the heavenly talisman realm in the perspective of the entire immortal realms would be considered a genius at the peak. It would be tough for them to be defeated at the same cultivation level. Only in the sacred academy, the disciples from the heavenly talisman realm couldn't always succeed. Because, the people here were all geniuses at the peak of the immortal realms. They represented the peak of immortal foundation in the immortal realms. Lei Ba was undoubtedly a demon-level genius. His personality was incomparably tyrannical and was known as the Thunder God's son. He was one of the leading characters in the immortal foundation realm of the Thunder God Hall. Right now, his cultivation base was at the 8th level and he was extremely tyrannical. Even disciples from the heavenly talisman realm who were a level higher than him were all obstructed by him. You guys have already been defeated and were defeated very miserably. Lei Ba stared at Tang Sheng as he spoke. Is this your so-called arranged battle? Tang Sheng glanced at them. There were people from the Thunder God Hall and experts from the 9 Emperors' immortal state. How could they not be defeated when these two powers joined forces? Just take Jun Mengchen's opponent for example, a 6th-level immortal foundation expert, one of the 3 leading characters of the 9 Emperors' immortal state, Huang Yudi. Huang Yudi's cultivation base couldn't be considered high. In truth, when he entered the sacred academy, his cultivation base was only at the 4th level. But now, he was already at the 6th level. Such talent was extremely rare and in fact, his cultivation speed was the fastest among the 3 leading characters of the 9 Emperors' immortal state. Right now, Huang Wudi was already at the 9th level. However, everyone knew that in the future, Huang Yudi's accomplishments would surely surpass Huang Wudi. Right now, Jun Mengchen's cultivation base was at the 4th level of immortal foundation. He had also improved greatly in the sacred academy but his opponent was Huang Yudi. How could he win? The 9 Emperors' immortal state was a peak-tier immortal empire in the central regions of the immortal realms. They had existed for countless years and had extremely deep foundations. The 9 great emperor scriptures were known as mystical books in the immortal realms, possessing boundless might. Within the immortal empire, geniuses were as common as the clouds. At the immortal foundation level, there were 3 most outstanding characters, all of them were incomparably dazzling. Huang Wudi dared to name himself invincible. Huang Jiudi had enemies under the heavens. He was even more outstanding compared to Huang Wudi who dared to fight against Jia Nantian back then. Therefore, even though Jun Mengchen's battle prowess was frighteningly strong, it was still impossible for him to defeat Huang Yudi. Very quickly, he was injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at his opponent and said angrily, I refuse to accept this. Why not? Huang Jiudi clasped his hands behind his back, looking incomparably arrogant. If I was at the 6th level of Immortal Foundation, what does your arrogance count for in front of me? Jun Mengchen coldly spoke. A low cultivation base means a low cultivation base. How can there be ifs? let me ask you again. The daughter of the evergreen immortal emperor, Qing'er, whose woman is she? Huangjiadi stepped out, like a human emperor descending from the heavens. His aura was boundless, unexcelled in the world. Emperor light radiated from him. Princess Qing'er is naturally the woman of my senior brother. In the future, she will be the wife of my senior brother. No matter how many times you ask, the answer will still be the same. Jun Mengchen spoke with cold arrogance. The conflict between him and Huangjiadi was precisely because of this. Who does your senior brother think he is? Huangjiadi spoke with cold arrogance. Since you refuse to change, I can only beat you up until you change. Princess Qing'er and my senior brother are in love with each other. Even the Changqing the Great has tacitly agreed to this. You want me to deny this? How ridiculous. Even if you are temporarily stronger than me, your words are completely illogical. Logic? Huangjiadi laughed. In this world, there are actually people who use the word logic. What a joke. Don't you know that in the cultivation world, strength is logic? Before this, Leba once said that he wanted to pursue Princess Qing'er. But now, he took the initiative to back out. Do you think it's because of logic? Huangjiadi didn't hide anything as he spoke. Leba's countenance stiffened. But when he thought of that person, he ultimately chose to remain silent. Since my elder brother has his eyes on Princess Qing'er is naturally his woman, my sister-in-law. No one can doubt this point. As for your senior brother, who does he think he is? Huangjiadi spoke slowly. When he mentioned the word elder brother, a rare look of reverence appeared in his arrogant eyes. Huang Wudi was his elder brother, but the person Huangjiadi respected was obviously not Huang Wudi, because his own talent was more outstanding than Huang Wudi's. To be able to make Huangjiadi respect someone much more outstanding than him, someone who could cultivate the 9 volumes of the Emperor's canon, someone who was flawless and shocking. There were many people from the 9 Emperors' immortal state standing behind Huangjiadi. When they heard Huangjiadi's words, their eyes showed that it was natural. It was as if Huangjiadi's words were the supreme truth and there was no need to doubt it. His elder brother had his eyes on Princess Qing'er. Then, naturally, Princess Qing'er would be his elder brother's woman. In the future, you will know what kind of person my senior brother is, Jun Mengchen said coldly. He clenched his fists tightly and was incomparably furious. It was rumored that half a year ago, Huangjiadi's elder brother, the prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, met Huang Wudi and the others who were cultivating in this sacred academy in the sky-connecting realm. He said that the daughter of the Changqing the Great was not bad. From then on, the people from the 9 emperors' immortal state warned everyone in the sky-connecting realm that the daughter of the Changqing the Great, Qing'er, was the woman that the prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state had his eyes on. No one was allowed to touch her. Leba had once said that he wanted to pursue Qin Wintian's woman because of Chu Qingyi. But because of a sentence from the prince, he announced that he would back out. However, Jun Mengchen was not convinced. Princess Qing'er was the woman that his senior brother, Qin Wentian, liked at that time. Naturally, it was impossible for her to be the woman of the prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state. Jun Mengchen's voice entered Huangjiadi's ears. Huangjiadi wanted Jun Mengchen to change his words. He had to change it. How overbearing was that? No matter what kind of person he is, if he appears in front of me, I will make him take the initiative to announce to the world that he has nothing to do with Princess Qing'er. Huangjiadi was incomparably arrogant. His elder brother had indeed only said one sentence. But one sentence was enough because that was his elder brother. How tyrannical. Many in the surroundings were geniuses at the peak of the immortal realms. Among them, there was no lack of geniuses from the central regions. As people of the same generation, they naturally knew who were the more outstanding characters among them. And those from the 9 emperors' immortal state were naturally the cream of the crop. This Huangjiadi was truly as tyrannical as the rumors said, having no one in his eyes other than his elder brother. Huang Wudi was already very arrogant, but Huangjiadi was even more arrogant compared to Huang Wudi. Naturally, he was also more capable of stirring up trouble. However, Although he could afford to offend someone, others couldn't afford to offend him. Qin Wendian had already arrived. Although he didn't personally witness the battle, he heard the arrogant voice of Huang Jiudi. From the voice transmission transmitted by the beauty from the Sun Kingdom, he also knew that this person was Huang Jiudi and what sort of character he was. Because there were too many spectators, and Jun Mengchen and the others were too busy to care about anything else, they didn't notice that Qin Wendian had already arrived. The elder brother he spoke of is in another sacred academy. He should be in the same sacred academy as the girl you like. As for Huang Jiudi, the reason why he announced this to the world was because he heard a single sentence from his elder brother in the sky-connecting realm. Just because of that sentence, the son of the thunder god, Leba, decided to retreat. Now, you should understand what I meant by the words I spoke to you before. The maiden transmitted her voice over. MHM, Qin Wendian nodded. The maiden beside him had a smile on her face. She didn't see any anger in Qin Wendian's eyes. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but to be filled with curiosity. For anyone who heard someone telling them to admit that the girl they liked had no relationship with them, it was inevitable that they would be angry, right? Qin Wendian naturally had a reason to be angry. But so what? Could it be that he had to release his violent aura to vent his anger? You said that it was a misunderstanding back then. But in the end, you were still standing together with that perverted monk and even went against us. This is the truth. And since I brought you here, I believe you won't blame me. If you take this step out, then the grudge between us will be over. The maiden calmly stared ahead. She was thinking that with the Qin Wendian she saw in her eyes, how could he not step out? Very fair. Qin Wendian nodded. She didn't guess wrongly. Qin Wendian stepped out. Looking at Qin Wendian walking towards the sky above the ancient palace, many gazes naturally landed on him. And the instant Leba saw him, the lightning on his body trembled even more excitedly. His eyes flashed with cold lightning. Jun Mengchen stared at Qin Wendian. His eyes flickered with excitement. After so many years, senior brother Qin was still as elegant as ever. The aura on his body was even more unfathomable. In these 30-plus years, Qin Wendian's strength had improved tremendously. As for senior brother Qin, he wouldn't waste his time. The last time they met, Qin Wendian was captured and heavily injured. His aura was extremely weak. This was the first time in 30-plus years that they were truly reunited. Senior brother. Jun Mengchen calmly greeted. Even after so many years, he still called Qin Wendian, senior brother, so naturally. The people of the Nine Emperors' immortal state looked at Qin Wendian. When he called Qin Wendian, senior brother, and sensed the aura on Leba's body, they immediately knew who had arrived. How do you want me to announce it to the world? Qin Wendian said plainly. He walked to Jun Mengchen's side. He looked at Huang Yudi and spat out a bone-chilling voice. Countless gazes focused on the elegant silhouette that spat out a cold voice. The princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom watched as Qin Wendian walked out to face the Nine Emperors' immortal state. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. She thought to herself, I didn't misjudge him. He is indeed a proud person. However, some people didn't think so. For example, Leba. The rules of the Sacred Academy have changed for many years. You have also been hiding for so many years. Now, you finally dare to show yourself. I wonder what realm you have cultivated to that you dare to come out and walk around. Leba said plainly. He took a step forward. His tone was filled with a strong attitude of indifference and killing intent. Back then in the sky-connecting realm, Chu Qingyi's words were like lightning striking his chest and heart. He couldn't forget it. Back then, he was already insufferably arrogant. He didn't even put Qin Wendian in his eyes. Moreover, he had become stronger today. Qin Wendian had never been an opponent in his eyes. He was merely someone that he wanted to humiliate and kill. That was all. It was because Qin Wendian wasn't even qualified to be his opponent. Chapter 1159. Although Leba felt that Qin Wendian didn't even have the qualifications to be his opponent, for some things, Qin Wendian still had to pay the price. Also, back then, Qin Wendian was extremely ruthless in his actions. What sort of status did the Holy Maiden of the Snowdrift Sage Hall, Chu Qingyi, have? Although there were many holy maidens in the Snowdrift Sage Hall, they couldn't be compared to Qing'er, who was the disciple of Ji and also the woman doted on by Chongqing the Great. But even so, she was still profaned and humiliated by others. Also, everyone knew that he, Leba, was pursuing Chu Qingyi. In that case, Leba also had reason to believe that Qin Wendian was hiding from him, not daring to meet him. If not, the 4 sacred academies had already been connected through these years. Qin Wendian had no reason to not show himself. Although the sacred academy was very vast, it wasn't so vast that they wouldn't know of Leba's declaration. Since this was the case, if Qin Wendian was willing, he would naturally have a way to find him. But Qin Wendian didn't. Now that Qin Wendian finally came out, most probably, his cultivation base had improved greatly. Or maybe, he saw his junior apprentice brother being humiliated and had no choice but to come out. Qin Wendian stared at Leba. Those deep eyes of his seemed to be able to penetrate through space, mincing Leba into pieces. Back then when Chu Qingyi acted against Jun Mengchen, she might still be able to find a reason to be implicated because of him. But the one who acted was Leba. Just like his name, he was tyrannical and domineering, standing up for Chu Qingyi. When had Qin Wendian ever existed in his eyes? He didn't, Huang Yudi didn't either. This was why they dared to be so arrogant and brazen. Qin Wendian turned around and looked at Jun Mengchen. He said, "I'm sorry to have dragged you into this." Jun Mengchen smiled and didn't seem to care at all. He was naturally free and easy, so he naturally wouldn't think that he was implicated by his senior brother just because he was beaten. This kind of thinking was truly shameful. "Senior brother, it's good that you're here. Some people are really too arrogant," Jun Mengchen said and briefly told Qin Wendian what had happened. Huang Yudi and Leba watched quietly. No one stopped Jun Mengchen because they wanted to let Qin Wendian know what had happened. If Qin Wendian didn't even know, how could they humiliate him? After listening to Jun Mengchen, Huang Yudi looked at Qin Wendian with a smile and said calmly, "Since you already know what happened and know that my senior brother has taken a fancy to Princess Qing, then you can say it yourself. Tell everyone that you and Princess Qing, of the Evergreen Kingdom have nothing to do with you." When Huang Yudi spoke these words, he was as calm as ever, so calm that it was as though these words were the truth, an unquestionable truth. Because he, Huang Yudi, was the one who said these words, because his elder brother had taken a liking to that princess. Qin Wendian narrowed his eyes as he stared at Huang Yudi. In fact, he didn't feel any anger, but it wasn't because he wasn't angry. It was because his anger had already been suppressed to a limit. He didn't mind others liking Qing because that meant that Qing was very outstanding. Even if the other party wanted to woo Qing he knew that it would be no different from asking for trouble. But this man before him actually wanted him to personally tell the world that Qing had nothing to do with him. This could no longer be described as arrogance or pride. But when Huang Yudi said this, he was actually so calm, as though this was how it should be. Qin Wendian also saw Huang Yudi. Back then in the Sky Connecting Realm, he had personally witnessed the battle between Jia Nantian and Huang Yudi. He naturally wouldn't forget who Huang Yudi was. As someone from the 9 Emperors' immortal state of the Central Regions, Huang Yudi was truly arrogant. There are some things that can't be avoided by remaining silent. Huang Yudi added when he saw that Qin Wendian didn't say anything. "It's not that I'm silent, I'm just a little surprised." Qin Wendian finally spoke. Everyone stared at Qin Wendian with interest. Those geniuses who were here to watch the liveliness had thought of many possibilities. They thought that Qin Wendian might explode in anger, and they also thought that Qin Wendian would hide his killing intent in his heart. But now, Qin Wendian actually calmly said that he was somewhat surprised. But at this moment, Qin Wendian's lips parted as he continued, "The Crown Prince of the 9 Emperors' immortal state is actually an idiot. As the sound of his voice faded, the gazes of everyone froze. This sentence was truly interesting. Could the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, Huang Yudi, be an idiot? Naturally not. Most probably, no one would dare to think so. How could a young prince with heaven-defying talent who was even more outstanding than Huang Yudi by the 9 emperors' immortal state be an idiot? Interesting. Huang Yudi froze for a moment before he suddenly laughed. However, that pair of smiling eyes contained an eerie coldness that caused people's hearts to palpitate. Not interesting at all. Qin Wentian continued, everyone in the eastern regions knows of my relationship with Qing. I once held Qing hand in the Evergreen Kingdom's royal palace and announced to the world that she is someone that I, Qin Wentian, like. Qing naturally likes me as well. But as the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, you actually want me to tell everyone that I have no relationship with Qing? Other than an idiot, I really can't think of anyone who would say such a stupid thing. Huang Yudi laughed maniacally. Leiba also laughed maniacally. What you said seems to be logical, but things like logic are only meant for those who have no ability. If it was an ordinary person who wanted you to say those words, it would naturally be a stupid thing to say. But the person who wanted you to say those words is Huang Yudi, the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state. In that case, he naturally isn't an idiot. A person behind Huang Yudi spoke. When someone is stronger than you, and much stronger, no matter how stupid the words he says to you, it would still be the truth. This sentence itself is also the truth. That person's voice was powerful and resonant, like the voice of truth. Even the spectators who were watching the show felt that this sentence was the truth. There was no such thing as logic in the world, how could there be any stupid words? The crux of the matter was who said it. Let's add a few more words. Huang Yudi looked at Qin Wentian and said, I want you to announce to the world that you have nothing to do with Princess Qing, and Princess Qing, is my brother's woman. Since you are the prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, then your elder must be the monarch of the 9 emperors' immortal state. Such a person should be a rare and powerful figure. It's a pity that they seem to have neglected to teach their children, which led to such an uneducated son. I really feel sorry for them. Qin Wentian's calm voice contained a hint of anger. Who in the world wouldn't be able to hear it? He actually dared to implicate the ruler of the 9 emperors' immortal empire. From this, one could very well imagine the flames of rage burning in his eyes. Boom! Waves of violent imperial aura bloomed. It wasn't the aura from Huang Yudi, but the aura from the strong cultivators of the 9 emperors' immortal state behind him. This sentence not only said that Huang Yudi was uneducated, but it also seemed to imply that the monarch of the 9 emperors' immortal state didn't teach his son well. Otherwise, how could he have raised such an uneducated son like Huang Yudi? The young man in front of him was extraordinarily courageous. Although Huang Yudi didn't release any violent aura, the murderous intent in his eyes was even more intense. The Sacred Academy had rules that forbade killing. Otherwise, he would definitely kill the person in front of him. A dead person naturally couldn't compete with his elder brother for a woman. However, it was precisely because of such rules in the Sacred Academy that he needed Qin Wentian to admit it himself. As long as Qin Wentian said these words, the princess of the Evergreen Kingdom would probably give up on him. Huang Yudi was able to think of all these. How could he be stupid? You should know that these words are not only insulting me, but also insulting my family, Huang Yudi said. You should know that your words are not only insulting me, but they are also insulting Qing Heir. Qin Wentian replied. Announcing that Qing Heir was the woman of the prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state was a huge insult to Qing Heir. In that case, do you know that if this place wasn't the Sacred Academy, the moment you said those words earlier, you would already be a dead man? Huang Yudi acted as though he hadn't heard Qin Wentian's words, as he continued mumbling to himself. I only know that if this wasn't the Sacred Academy, I wouldn't have said those words. Because when you want me to say those words, you would be a dead man, Qin Wentian replied. Then, there was another period of silence. Although it's forbidden to kill in the Sacred Institute, you'll still say what I want you to say in the end. After a moment of silence, Huang Yuti persisted. His tone was as resolute as ever. However, he knew that it was impossible for him to make Qin Wendian say those words. The people behind him also knew this, hence, some of them stepped out. If I didn't see wrongly, your cultivation base should be at the 5th level of Immortal Foundation. I don't like to bully those with lower cultivation bases. Hence, it's better for someone else to act on my behalf first. Not only are you stupid, you are also shameless enough. Could it be that the person who injured my junior brother earlier wasn't you? To think that you can say such shameless words in front of so many people. I truly admire you. Qin Wendian laughed. Since you are already used to doing such things, why don't you do it yourself? In any case, you would have to act sooner or later. Even if you want me to act, I have to first see if you have the qualifications to do so. Huang Yuti continued. From the start till the end, he was as arrogant as ever. The people from the Thunder God Hall weren't in a hurry. Leba quietly watched. Although he really wanted to personally use the cruelest lightning punishment on Qin Wendian, he believed that Qin Wendian wouldn't compromise so easily. In that case, Huang Yuti would let Qin Wendian understand how to humiliate someone, making him say the cruelest words. The words that Huang Yuti wanted Qin Wendian to say were naturally cruel. Because Qin was the woman that Qin Wendian liked, but he wanted Qin Wendian to personally admit that she was the woman of his royal brother. Even if it was so cruel, Qin Wendian still had to say it eventually. There were people from the 9 Emperors' immortal state who understood Huang Yuti's meaning. Hence, an expert stepped out. This expert was a 5th-level Immortal Foundation genius. His cultivation base was the same as Qin Wendian. Just like what Huang Yuti said, if Qin Wendian wanted him to act, he should at least let him see if he was qualified or not. Since this expert from the 9 Emperors' immortal state could enter the Tiandao's Sacred Academy, he naturally wouldn't be a mediocre character. On the contrary, he was extremely powerful. When he blasted out a punch, that majestic emperor aura seemed to be able to lacerate everything, exuding an unparalleled will, wanting to destroy Qin Wendian who was standing there. And Qin Wendian stood there from the start till the end, as though he didn't see that violent punch. Chapter 1160. Qin Wendian's eyes were as calm as ever. He didn't see that punch because, in his eyes, there was no such thing as a punch. Immortal light instantly enveloped Qin Wendian. The tyrannical king fist slammed into his body, causing the space around him to tremble violently. The sound of wind and thunder could be heard, terrifying to the extreme. Under this ferocious fist, Qin Wendian's body of flesh and blood seemed so tiny and inconsequential, as though it could be easily torn apart. Qin Wendian didn't shatter. He continued standing there, as steady as a boulder, as indestructible as a rock. Terrifying immortal light radiated from him, so dazzling that it almost blinded the eyes of others, so much so that the 9th prince felt his heart trembling. He was a heaven's chosen of the 9 emperors' immortal state and was able to enter the Sacred Academy. From this, one could see what sort of character he was. His cultivation base was at the 5th level of Immortal Foundation and his might was unparalleled. In addition, he was also very young and was naturally very arrogant. There was no need to doubt how powerful his fists were. But when he saw the calmness and indifference in Qin Wendian's eyes, the pride in his heart was slowly being destroyed. If he couldn't even move the body of his opponent, one could very well imagine how great the disparity in strength between the two of them was. It was simply insurmountable. Ha! A thunderous roar rang out, exploding the eardrums of the crowd. That expert from the 9 Emperors' immortal state was bathed in emperor light as he released his immortal foundation, resembling a human emperor. His fists shone with an incomparably resplendent light as the shadows of human emperors ferociously slashed out. His eyes were incomparably sharp, he wanted nothing more than to destroy Qin Wendian. Even if he was defeated, he wouldn't allow himself to be defeated like this. Qin Wendian continued standing there. He was like a constellation in the night sky, radiating an incomparably resplendent light. Such a radiance caused the experts who blasted into him to feel a sense of inferiority, a deep sense of inferiority. Qin Wendian stretched out his hand. That palm seemed to contain a formless energy, containing a fearsome binding force. At this instant, that expert from the Nine Emperors' immortal empire didn't even have time to dodge. Just like that, his head was directly grabbed by Qin Wendian's hand and flung to the side. It was like tossing away a dog, so effortless. Qin Wendian didn't even injure his opponent. But precisely because of this, that expert felt a deep sense of humiliation. In Qin Wendian's eyes, he basically didn't exist. If not, Qin Wendian wouldn't have been so lazy to injure him. He stood there, staring at Qin Wendian with a blank expression. Was this the strength he was so proud of? Why couldn't he even withstand a single strike? Can you scram out now? Qin Wendian's gaze was so calm as he stared at Huang Jiyudi. It was so calm that there were no fluctuations in his eyes. In fact, his eyes had never left Huang Jiyudi. When had he ever faced that opponent earlier? Things are getting more and more interesting. The spectators all had faint smiles in their eyes when they saw this scene. If Qin Wendian merely defeated his opponent, they wouldn't find it interesting. But how could this be described with just the word defeated? That expert from the Nine Emperors' immortal state earlier didn't even have the qualifications to make Qin Wendian act. Naturally, no one knew how strong Qin Wendian was exactly, or how strong his true strength was. Maybe, he could really fight against Huang Jiyudi. As expected of an expert with a saint-grade immortal foundation. Many people still remembered the time when Qin Wendian entered the Sacred Academy over 30 years ago. At that time, Qin Wendian had stolen the limelight of everyone. Although they didn't feel that Qin Wendian was stronger than everyone, at the very least, he was the strongest in certain aspects. For example, astral souls and immortal foundation. Since this was the case, his combat prowess shouldn't be too disappointing. And the scene earlier proved this point. Qin Wendian was far stronger compared to other geniuses at the same cultivation level. Not only was he stronger by a little, he was on a completely different level. However, that person wasn't a match for Qin Wendian. His opponent now was Huang Jiyudi who was said to be a match for everyone under the heavens. And as expected, at this moment, Huang Jiyudi smiled. His smile was still as cold as before. He stared at Qin Wendian and spoke, "Seems like you do indeed have the qualifications to make me act. However, you still have to say that sentence." He didn't know that Qin Wendian would never say that sentence. Leaving aside the fact that he was merely Huang Jiyudi, even if he really was a match for everyone under the heavens, how could he make Qin Wendian say such a sentence? "Scram out here." Qin Wendian emphasized his words. Could it be that those arrogant and conceited geniuses like to flaunt their strength in front of others? By saying that Qin Wendian had the qualifications to make him act, it was as if he was standing in the clouds and Qin Wendian was only qualified to fight with him. Huang Yudi's words showed his arrogance. Qin Wendian simply repeated the 3 words. Wasn't it also a kind of arrogance that disregarded everything? Even if his opponent was Huang Yudi, he still only had 3 simple words, "Scram out here." Isn't it a bit too harsh? Among the crowd, beside the beautiful princess from the Shooting Sun Kingdom, a young man faintly spoke. He was a prince of the Shooting Sun Kingdom and this woman was his royal sister. Naturally, she was the princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom. Both of them were supreme geniuses and within the Sacred Academy, how many of them were ordinary people? The princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom understood what her royal brother was referring to. Luring Qin Wendian here, to Qin Wendian, was truly too ruthless. As an immortal empire of the central regions, they had frequent dealings with the 9 emperors' immortal state. They naturally knew what sort of characters the 3 princes of the 9 emperors' immortal state were. Since Qin Wendian came here, he naturally had to face them. And his opponents were Huang Yudi and Huang Wudi. What awaited Qin Wendian was nothing but intense humiliation. Even if Qin Wendian could resolve the situation here, the price he had to pay would be unimaginable. What sort of situation would he have to face in the future? This was simply a dead end. This should have been the situation he had to face, I merely brought it forward. In such a situation, it would naturally be more intense. He helped that lewd monk, I'm making him face the challenge more directly. Why would royal brother feel that this is too ruthless? The princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom stared at her elder brother as she spoke. Her elder brother shrugged his shoulders and smiled. He was just casually speaking, he naturally wouldn't have any benevolence in his heart. The word benevolence was impossible for someone of his status to possess. With regards to this point, he had understood it since he was very young. It's just that I feel that it's a pity. The prince laughed. The beautiful eyes of the princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom flashed with a strange light. Seems like her royal brother had high hopes for Qin Wentian. If not, he wouldn't feel that it was a pity. It was a pity. Of course, it was a pity. Qin Wentian was likely to suffer an unprecedented blow. If he was forced to say something like that, how would he be able to hold on to his heart? If he didn't say it, he would probably be even more miserable. Of course, Huang Yuti wouldn't roll out. He walked out. Qin Wentian had repeatedly rolled out twice. If he didn't come out, he wouldn't be Huang Yuti. Huang Yuti, who walked out, stood proudly. His eyes were fixed on Qin Wentian, filled with pride. I've long recognized you. When we first entered the Sacred Academy, at that instant, the radiance radiating from you surpassed everyone else, to the point where I even compared myself to you. However, this thought didn't last for too long before it was forgotten by me. Although you radiated boundless radiance for an instant, like a goshawk soaring through the skies, in the eyes of the great rock, there should be no such thing as a goshawk. Because, he was born to dominate the entire sky. Hence, if it wasn't for that princess, I think we wouldn't have had any interactions at all. As Huang Yuti spoke, his aura gushed forth. An incomparably powerful aura gushed forth as numerous shadows of human emperors revolved around him. At this instant, he was clad in a set of human emperor armor, resembling a true peerless human emperor, unrivaled in the world. 6 human emperors, each with a different attribute. Huang Yuti is truly a true heaven's chosen. He studied the 9 Grand Emperor canons since he was young and was able to cultivate 6 of them. Other than that elder brother of his, there's no one in the younger generation of the 9 Emperors' immortal state who can be mentioned in the same breath as him. Even the powerful Huang Wuti couldn't compare to him. How powerful! The geniuses all stared at Huang Yuti. The 6 human emperors revolved around him, and in the middle, there was a near-perfect immortal foundation. Just the aura he exuded was so powerful that it caused the hearts of people to tremble. Although his cultivation base was only at the 6th level of immortal foundation, even geniuses at the 7th level of immortal foundation could feel their hearts palpitating when they sensed his aura. You said 2 sentences for me to scram out. In that case, I want you to repeat the same sentence 20 times. I believe this would be fairer. Huang Yuti laughed. He walked towards Qin Wentian step by step. The 6 human emperors shone with boundless light, abruptly erupting forth with 6-colored light that enveloped the entire space Qin Wentian was in. The 6-colored light converged together, instantly transforming into a destructive energy that wanted to destroy the entire space. A divine glow circulated around Qin Wentian, exuding boundless might. His perfect saint-grade immortal foundation gushed forth with a demonic might that caused the hearts of people to tremble. The shadow of a divine turtle appeared around him. This turtle was incomparably gigantic, encompassing the entire space around him. When the 6-colored light blasted over, the divine turtle's shadow trembled as it was corroded bit by bit, about to shatter apart. Huang Yuti was such a proud person, how could he not be powerful? If he wasn't powerful, how could he be praised as someone who would surpass Huang Wuti? Also, his cultivation base was at the 6th level of immortal foundation, higher than Qin Wentian. Usually when fighting against geniuses at the same level as him, just the 6-colored light radiating from him was enough to destroy them. In fact, he didn't even need to do anything. Strength was the capital that Huang Yuti was proud of. He naturally had the qualifications to be arrogant. Staring at the shadow of the divine turtle on Qin Wentian's body weakening, Huang Yuti laughed, as expected of someone who has the qualifications to make me act. If you were destroyed by the human emperor light, it would truly be too boring. Luckily you are not so weak that you would be killed by me. If not, I wonder if the rules of the Sacred Academy would punish me or not." As he spoke, the light grew even more intense. The shadow of the divine turtle was destroyed. Chapter 1161. Huang Yudi's eyes gleamed with sharpness. When the six-colored human emperor light radiated forth, very few experts on the same level as him would be able to resist it. As for those with lower cultivation bases, there was no need to doubt them. Staring at the shadow of the divine tortoise being destroyed, Huang Yudi's gaze was filled with arrogance. He was Huang Yudi, an enemy under the heavens. Since his elder brother had said such a sentence before, there were some things he should do for his elder brother. He was very clear of how arrogant his elder brother was. Just when Huang Yudi was waiting for Qin Wentian's defense to be destroyed, Qin Wentian didn't think so much. His perfect saint-grade immortal foundation shone with boundless resplendent light as the shadow of a divine tortoise manifested. After that, the light radiated out in all directions, enveloping him, forming a layer of supremely powerful defense. The six-colored nine emperor immortal light destroyed a divine tortoise, but the shadow of the divine tortoise was reborn. The human emperor light continued to blast out unceasingly, destroying the divine tortoise. However, a new layer of defense was formed. The supremely powerful attack and supremely powerful defense were actually locked in a stalemate. In the airspace above the ancient palace, the destructive light enveloped an extremely large area. It was very hard to imagine that such a powerful attack was actually a 6th-level Immortal Foundation expert fighting against a 5th-level Immortal Foundation expert. I really don't understand what qualifications you have to be arrogant. Qin Wentian calmly stared at his opponent. Even if his opponent's cultivation base was higher than his, even if his opponent had the Emperor Light, he had a perfect saint-grade immortal foundation as well as powerful demonic arts. If his opponent wanted to destroy him just by relying on his immortal foundation alone, he would have wasted all his years of cultivation. Not bad, you do have some strength. But if you think you can be arrogant in front of me just because of this, aren't you overestimating yourself a little too much? Huang Yudi stepped out. The Emperor Light radiating from him was as strong as ever, capable of destroying everything. If it wasn't for Qin Wentian's tyrannical defense, ordinary people wouldn't even have the qualifications to stand here and talk to him. Qi. The six-colored Emperor Immortal Light congregated together as the light from the Immortal Foundation shone brightly, even more dazzling than sunlight, blinding the eyes of others. A human emperor's sword manifested from the light of the human emperor appeared, exuding a feeling that it could exterminate all evils in the world. Even before the sword arrived, the sword might radiating from the human emperor's sword had already penetrated the shadow of the divine turtle. This sword was the human sovereign sword, and the light it emitted was the essence of the human sovereign immortal light. It was extremely tyrannical. The human sovereign sword descended upon the space covered by the black turtle, illuminating the world of starlight, destroying the defense of the black turtle around Qin Wentian. Huang Yudi was very strong, there was no need to doubt this point. If not, how could ordinary 6th-level Immortal Foundation geniuses stand a chance against Qin Wentian? A sword flew over with the speed of lightning, breaking apart the shadow of the divine turtle and shooting towards Qin Wentian. That beam of sword light enveloped Qin Wentian, destroying the space around him. There was nowhere for him to escape. But Qin Wentian didn't know how to flee. He transformed into a divine form, radiating light that was comparable to that of a mythological existence. He chanted incantations as gigantic ancient characters containing law might blasted out. His entire immortal foundation transformed into an incomparably gigantic ancient character, the word suppress. The might of this word, suppress, was unparalleled, containing the law energy of the great Tao. Boundless suppression characters radiated from within, sweeping out in all directions, suppressing everything. The terrifying human sovereign sword slashed over, humming noisily, but it was actually suppressed by the boundless suppression of the ancient characters before Qin Wentian, unable to move. The Emperor Light radiating from the sword was forcibly sealed away. No matter how resplendent it was still suppressed. Huang Yudi frowned, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. How powerful was he? Although his immortal foundation was inferior to Qin Wentian, being a 5th-tier king-grade immortal foundation, Huang Yudi didn't feel that his immortal foundation could be compared to Qin Wentian's. He cultivated the 9 emperor's arts and had 6 emperor codices, transforming them into astral souls of different attributes that resonated with each other to form his current immortal foundation. How perfect was his immortal foundation? If not, he wouldn't be able to unleash such overwhelming might. The human sovereign sword shone with a brilliant light. He pointed his finger forward as the human sovereign sword gleamed with light, wanting to cleave apart everything, wanting to kill Qin Wentian. This human sovereign sword wasn't a beam of sword light, it was a true condensed sword that contained boundless might and was under Huang Yudi's control. The domineering human emperor sword was as lofty as Huang Yudi, radiating a resplendent light as it exuded an unparalleled might. Piercing sounds rang out as the human emperor sword actually broke apart a fearsome suppression character, flying out from the side, humming as it spun in the air before vanishing from sight. In the next instant, the human emperor sword shone with a brilliant light as it directly appeared behind Qin Wentian, slashing towards him. The speed of the sword was terrifying to the extreme. Even if Qin Wentian used the suppression character to defend himself, he wouldn't have enough time. What a fast sword, what a powerful sword. Even geniuses at the 7th level felt their hearts trembling. They faintly felt that if they were in the shoes of this sword, it would be extremely difficult for them to defend against it. It was simply too powerful. Before this, the human sovereign sword flashed through the air with a speed so fast that it disappeared from the eyes of the spectators. From this, one could very well imagine how fast it was. There was no way to evade this sword. Just as it was about to pierce through Qin Wentian's body, the light from Qin Wentian's body flickered as the human sovereign sword pierced through Qin Wentian. However, the silhouette of Qin Wentian gradually dissipated, leaving behind only an illusory afterimage. Qin Wentian dodged this terrifying sword strike. His silhouette appeared in the air as a brilliant shadow of a golden-winged great rock appeared, enveloping him. At this instant, he transformed into a great rock, using the unparalleled speed of the rock race to evade this sword strike. Huang Yudi stared ahead as his eyes gleamed with sharpness. He thought of Jia Nantian who defeated him in the sky-connecting realm back then. Qin Wentian was actually able to use the treasured art of the golden-winged great rock, unleashing such terrifying speed to evade this unparalleled sword strike. The human sovereign sword returned to its original position, floating in the air above Huang Yudi. Its radiance was as resplendent as ever. His countenance was like lightning, staring at Qin Wentian as the battle intent in his eyes grew increasingly intense. The eyes of the experts in the surroundings gleamed with a dazzling light. Qin Wentian was actually able to fight against Huang Yudi to such an extent. Even the human sovereign sword was unable to injure him. Seems like this genius with a saint-grade immortal foundation truly had extraordinary capabilities. I've never fought against someone with a lower cultivation base than me for so long. No wonder you are so arrogant, seems like you do have some capabilities. Huang Yudi floated in the air as he spoke to Qin Wentian. He was still as brazen and as arrogant as ever. The people of the immortal realms all think that the ultimate arts have been lost. However, how could the 9 sovereign canon of my 9 emperors' immortal state be inferior to the ultimate arts of the ancient emperors? Today, being able to see 6 human sovereign swords, you should feel proud and honored. Huang Yudi continued. After which, his immortal foundation shone with a brilliant light as 6 human sovereign swords manifested, floating in the air, radiating supreme might. The 6 human sovereign swords all shone with a resplendent light as they revolved frenziedly, causing the heavens and earth to lose their color. I've never seen someone who speaks in such a disgusting manner before. Jun Mengchen was so angry that his aura fluctuated. This Huang Yudi didn't seem to have any advantage from the start to the end when fighting against his senior brother Qin Wentian. Not only that, his cultivation base was higher than Qin Wentian, but from his words, it was as though it was an honor for him to fight against Huang Yudi. This caused him to feel so disgusted that he wanted to vomit. I also have no way to understand. Why would such a fool appear in the 9 emperors' immortal state? Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he transformed into a true golden-winged rock. Before the lecture in the Sacred Academy, he underwent the baptism of demon blood in the sacred ground and battled against many saint beasts. How great of an improvement was this! He cultivated the 8 demonic treasured arts and had boundless might. In addition to his combat experience, he was able to perfectly fuse the various innate techniques together. If he transformed into a rock, he would be a true rock. His hand of God would be able to unleash boundless might from his entire body, and he would have an indestructible divine body. Even when compared to a pure-blooded golden-winged rock, he wouldn't be the slightest bit inferior. A golden bolt of lightning streaked across the sky, heading straight for Huang Yuди. This caused everyone to be astonished. Qin Wendian actually took the initiative to attack Huang Yudi. How audacious was he! You're courting death. Huang Yudi coldly snorted. 6 human sovereign swords burst forth at the same time. The terrifying light from the human sovereign swords destroyed everything as they headed straight for Qin Wendian, who had transformed into a rock. Bzz. Qin Wendian's speed transformed into a golden bolt of lightning. It was too fast, even faster than the light from the human sovereign swords. His wings flickered with a dazzling brilliance, wrapping around his body. When the light from the human sovereign swords landed on him, they were actually unable to break through his defense. One could very well imagine how terrifying his defense was. The 6 revolving human sovereign swords sealed the space, causing the body of the golden-winged great rock to be under a terrifying pressure. The human sovereign swords slashed out. The golden-winged great rock opened its beak and spat out words of suppression and destruction. At the same time, its terrifying claws slashed out. In an instant, numerous terrifying great rocks slashed out with their claws, aiming for the Emperor's swords. These attacks were naturally unleashed using the power of God's hand, causing the entire space to tremble. The terrifying attacks contained boundless might. The 6 Emperor swords hummed as they emitted an intense vibrating sound. Each and every one of them caused the space around them to be lacerated. However, with a flash of light, the body of the golden-winged great rock had already vanished. When the human sovereign swords were bound, the terrifying body of the golden-winged great rock appeared before Huang Yudi. His claws slashed out as an ancient character for suppression appeared, enveloping Huang Yudi's body. The current Qin Wendian could use all kinds of abilities to perfection. Qin Wendian's attack could be said to be extremely fast. With the ancient character for suppression, there was no way for Huang Yudi to resist. However, Huang Yudi was ultimately not an ordinary character. He instantly gave up on the human sovereign swords and enveloped his body with the human sovereign swords. He condensed 6 human sovereign imprints and blasted out brazenly, causing the heavens and earth to rumble. The attacks of the golden-winged great rock were incomparably violent, directly colliding with Qin Wendian's attacks. He didn't evade at all. His speed was shocking, and after the first attack, he immediately unleashed his second attack. He actually unleashed the might of a divine elephant, crushing everything in his path. Huang Yudi roared, unleashing his human sovereign immortal might to the extreme, frenziedly defending against Qin Wendian's explosive attacks. However, Qin Wendian's attacks were extremely tyrannical. Time and time again, Huang Yudi was forced to retreat unceasingly. His entire body trembled as his blood and qi churned wildly. Boom! Finally, a deafening sound rang out. Huang Yudi was struck as he coughed out fresh blood. A golden claw descended from the sky, directly grabbing onto his body as it was dragged downwards. Rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly, the ancient palace was crumbling apart. The violent scene caused the experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state to step out in shock. However, they only saw Qin Wendian hovering in the air. His sharp claws directly penetrated into Huang Yudi's body. It was as though as long as his claws slashed down, he would be able to cripple Huang Yudi's immortal foundation. The experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state involuntarily halted their steps as they stared at Qin Wendian. Arrogant to such an extent, do you really think that you are invincible under the heavens? I really want to know how you are feeling right now. Do you feel that your words earlier were extremely disgusting? Qin Wendian stared at Huang Yudi, who was covered in blood, as he calmly asked. Huang Yuti roared in rage, only to see Qin Wentian's claws transforming into palms that directly smashed onto Huang Yuti's face. A crisp smacking sound rang out, so clear and distinct. Chapter 1162. Qin Wentian's voice rang out in the air. In addition to Huang Yuti's earlier arrogance and disregard for everything, it was truly an irony. Huang Yuti, the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, was a match for everyone under the heavens. He had a cultivation base at the 6th level of immortal foundation, and his earlier words were like looking down on everything, treating Qin Wentian as an ant-like character. Wanting Qin Wentian to personally say that Princess Qing'er had nothing to do with him and was the woman of his brother Huang Yuti, how great of a humiliation was this to Qin Wentian. He even felt that it was an honor for Qin Wentian to fight against him. Everyone knew that he was Huang Yuti. Hence, no matter how arrogant he was, no matter how condescending his words were, everyone was already used to it. They felt that no matter how arrogant his words were, as long as it came from the mouth of Huang Yuti, no matter how unreasonable it would still be logical. Because he was strong. He was the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, Huang Yuti. However, all of these were based on how strong Huang Yuti was. Everything, when Huang Yuti was defeated, wasn't even worth a mention. In fact, it became an incomparably thick mockery for Huang Yuti. Those incomparably arrogant words from before were like a slap to his face just now. It was so ear-piercing. He was Huang Yuti, a match for everyone under the heavens. But at this moment, he was captured by Qin Wentian, coughing out blood and even having a palm print on his face. Was Huang Yuti still Huang Yuti? At this moment, the only thing left for the incomparably arrogant Huang Yuti was boundless humiliation. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, he was so arrogant earlier, yet he was defeated by Qin Wentian who was a level lower than him. How would he feel now? Would he feel disgusted by the arrogant words he spat out earlier? He actually lost. The spectators were still in a daze. Qin Wentian jumped a realm and defeated Huang Yuti who was said to be invincible under the heavens. Although he had a perfect saint-grade immortal foundation, the ending of this battle still caused everyone to feel a deep shock. This was especially so when they saw the power Qin Wentian unleashed earlier. Each of his attacks contained the innate techniques of greater demons, and all of them contained terrifying might. It was as though Qin Wentian himself was a true greater demon and those innate techniques were part of his innate talent. The contrast between Huang Yuti's arrogance and the current outcome was too stark. Boom, boom, boom. Numerous terrifying auras gushed forth. The experts of the 9 emperors' immortal state instantly moving towards Qin Wentian. This was especially so for Huang Yuti's brother, Huang Wuti. Right now, his cultivation base was at the 9th level of immortal foundation. How terrifying was his aura! Let him go. Huang Wuti spoke, and his voice seemed to carry an indisputable tone. Scram! Qin Wentian inclined his head and glanced at the experts here. His eyes, which were now in the form of a golden-winged roc, gleamed with incomparable loftiness. His sharp claws once again pierced towards Huang Yuti, causing Huang Yuti to howl in pain. Everyone could see Qin Wentian grabbing onto Huang Yuti's immortal foundation. As long as he willed it, he could shatter Huang Yuti's immortal foundation, crippling this supreme genius of the 9 emperors' immortal state. Huang Yuti's body trembled slightly. His eyes gleamed with a blood-red light as he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian. He was defeated, he was actually defeated. If you dare to touch me, you will die a graveless death. Huang Yuti stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. Are you starting to use the power behind your back to suppress me? You are incomparably arrogant, bullying my junior brother who is 2 levels lower than you, yet you are still so proud of it. I truly feel ashamed for you. Qin Wentian's lofty eyes turned cold to the extreme. How pathetic. The rules of the Sacred Academy state that no one can kill or cripple an expert who joined the Sacred Academy. You won't be able to do anything to me, you will die in my hands sooner or later. Huang Yuti stared at Qin Wentian, the killing intent in his eyes terrifying to the extreme. I really don't know why you still dare to be so arrogant even at this moment. Idiot. Qin Wendian slapped out again, ruthlessly slapping Huang Yudi's face. The sounds of slapping rang out unceasingly, and with every slap, a bloody palm print would appear on Huang Yudi's face, until his entire face turned red and swollen. Arg! Huang Yudi roared in rage, he doesn't dare to touch me. Capture him. Boom! Huang Yudi turned ashen. He took a step forward as a terrifying might gushed forth. Boom! A fearsome destructive might enveloped Huang Yudi. Qin Wendian's terrifying claws grabbed onto Huang Yudi's immortal foundation as the destructive might ravaged it. It felt like as long as he exerted a little more strength, Huang Yudi would become a cripple. Do you guys want to gamble? Qin Wendian inclined his head and stared at Huang Yudi as he coldly spoke. Huang Yudi halted his steps once more, the light radiating from him was so bright that it could blind the eyes of people. The rules of the Sacred Academy, I bet you wouldn't dare to defy it. Huang Yudi coldly spoke, yet he only saw Qin Wendian laughing uproariously, wouldn't dare to defy it? Do you still remember what Huang Yudi said earlier? In this world, there's no logic to speak of. He is strong, he is the logic, he is the rule. He wanted me to say that after he defeated me, he would make me suffer the greatest humiliation. But now, I'm the one who defeated him. The rules of the Sacred Academy are set by humans. I believe the Sacred Academy has seen everything that happened here. In that case, since I've won, even if I cripple him, what reason does the Sacred Academy have to act against me? Even if you dare to touch him, you should also understand what the consequences are. Huang Yudi coldly spoke. Before this, the White Tiger people were as arrogant as you all. They thought that I was just a lowly human and that they were incomparably arrogant, born to be kings. Only they could humiliate me and I couldn't resist. But in the end, I killed 2 white tigers and roasted their meat in front of the White Tiger people. You can imagine how much the White Tiger people hate me, but I'm still alive and well, standing here. I even dared to roast a white tiger and eat it. Tell me, do you think I dare to cripple him or not? Qin Wendian spoke. Huang Yudi was still struggling. His silhouette flashed as he rushed into the ancient palace below, smashing Huang Yudi's body into it. His incomparably sharp claws were still locked onto Huang Yudi's immortal foundation. Staring at the berserk Qin Wendian as well as his arrogant words, it was completely different from the earlier Qin Wendian. At this moment, it was like he had transformed into the incomparably arrogant Huang Yudi. At this moment, only then did everyone see this young man clearly. This young man who possessed a perfect saint-grade immortal foundation. It was rumored that in the Sacred Academy where the White Tiger people resided, there was someone who had a conflict with the White Tiger people and stepped onto the life and death arena. There was a human expert who killed 2 white tigers and roasted their meat in front of the White Tiger people. This was something that happened many years ago, but they could still remember this rumor in the sky-connecting realm. Only now did they know that the young man who roasted white tiger meat was none other than Qin Wendian. He dared to roast white tiger meat. In that case, would he dare to cripple Huang Yudi? Would the people of the 9 Emperors' immortal state dare to gamble with him? Among the crowd, Leba undoubtedly understood Qin Wendian very well. Back then, after the incident with Chu Qingyi, he had been searching for Qin Wendian. He inquired about many things about Qin Wendian and knew that in the Sacred Academy where there were many demonic beasts, Qin Wendian feasted on white tiger meat. He also knew that there was a powerful clan following Qin Wendian, but he didn't care. He was Leba. Although Qin Wendian was arrogant, he wasn't qualified to be his enemy. Today, Qin Wendian defeated Huang Yudi in front of him, and in such a domineering manner. Although Leba hated Qin Wendian's strength, he revealed a sense of excitement from the bottom of his heart. If this was the case, the feud between Qin Wendian and the 9 Emperors' immortal state would definitely be formed. Moreover, based on Qin Wendian's personality, Huang Yudi wouldn't be able to get away so easily. Then, the feud between them would definitely be irresolvable. What do you want? Huang Yudi stared at Qin Wendian and said. Scram. Qin Wendian spat out a word and told the people of the 9 Emperors' immortal state to scram. Arranged battle. The experts of the Nine Emperors' immortal state and the Thunder God Hall obviously wanted to suppress Jun Mengchen's group. What kind of arranged battle was this? If it was a real arranged battle, it would be a one-on-one battle with people of the same realm. However, previously, Huang Yuti attacked Jun Mengchen and forced Jun Mengchen to say that sentence. Was this considered a arranged battle? The people of the Nine Emperors' immortal state didn't care about the rules. They believed that strength was the rule. In that case, Qin Wendian didn't care about the rules either and told them to scram. Your junior brother and many of your sect members are here. If you touch him, I can also cripple some of them. Huang Wuti stared at Qin Wendian. Seems like your royal elder brother doesn't care about you at all. Your pride doesn't seem to be that important. Qin Wendian stared at Huang Yuti and laughed. He stretched out his palm as destructive energy gushed forth violently. Huang Yuti screamed in pain as he felt his immortal foundation trembling. He was so frightened that his entire body started to tremble. His eyes were filled with deep terror. Cracks appeared on his immortal foundation and it seemed like it would collapse at any moment. No! Huang Yuti roared. He was the supreme genius of the Nine Emperors' immortal state, Huang Yuti. If he was crippled, he would become a pitiful worm in the Nine Emperors' immortal state. No one would even pity him. A cripple didn't have the qualifications to be part of the royal clan, especially the royal clan of the Nine Emperors' immortal state. Stop! Huang Wuti roared. Qin Wendian naturally wouldn't stop. The destructive energy continued to wreak havoc. He inclined his head and coldly stared at Huang Wuti. Against his enemies, he had no fear, only ruthlessness. In theory, Huang Wuti naturally could capture Jun Mengchen to threaten Qin Wendian. But that was only in theory. No one would really dare to risk Huang Yuti's immortal foundation. Although Huang Yuti was crippled, he would definitely become a marginalized character in the immortal empire. Those who could save Huang Yuti but chose not to do so would also be punished severely. Let's go. Huang Wuti compromised. He stared at Qin Wendian. Let's hope he is safe and sound. If not, if the rules of the Sacred Academy don't punish you, you and your friends will have to pay for what they did to you. After speaking, Huang Wuti waved his hand and led the experts of the Nine Emperors' immortal state away. He was truly decisive. Staring at the departing experts of the Nine Emperors' immortal state, Huang Yuti stared at Qin Wendian. Release me. Release you? Qin Wendian stared at Huang Yuti and laughed. Do you still remember the words you wanted me to say earlier? In that case, you should at least tell everyone that you, Huang Yuti, were wrong. Qin Wendian didn't allow Huang Yuti to say anything too harsh. Although he really wanted to cripple Huang Yuti's immortal foundation right now, since this was the Sacred Academy, he still had to abide by some rules. Naturally, at the very least, he should consider Jun Mengchen and the others. After all, not everyone from the Nine Emperors' immortal state was trash. But he believed that for someone as arrogant as Huang Yuti, admitting his mistake was something he would never forget. Chapter 1163. Huang Yuti's entire body was trembling. Not only because of the pain, but also because of the boundless humiliation he felt. Qin Wendian wanted him to admit his mistakes. As a supreme genius of the Nine Emperors' immortal state, when has anyone ever made him admit his mistakes before? Huang Yuti, how could he be wrong? He was destined to be extraordinary from birth and had experienced all sorts of tempering his temperament. His entire life seemed to be perfect and flawless. Once he admitted his mistakes, would he still be himself? Today, the humiliation of this defeat was like a knife cutting into his body. If he admitted his mistakes, it would be like using a sharp sword to scrape his wounds, leaving behind an unforgettable scar. Would he still have the conviction to pursue that supreme realm? Would he still be able to pursue the path of an ancient emperor? No, Huang Yuti, wouldn't admit his mistakes. Qin Wendian wouldn't dare to kill him. The humiliation today, I will engrave it in my heart. Also, my Nine Emperors' immortal state has already admitted defeat and retreated from this place. You actually want me to admit my mistakes? Is this even possible? Huang Jiudi coldly spoke. Is it not possible? Qin Wentian's eyes were as cold as ever. Destructive energy ravaged Huang Jiudi's body, crushing his immortal foundation. As long as he willed it, he could destroy Huang Jiudi's immortal foundation. Since you are defeated, you will have to pay the price for your arrogance. Announce to everyone that you are wrong. Qin Wentian's voice was like a sharp blade cutting into Huang Jiudi's body. The destructive energy howled ferociously as Huang Jiudi's immortal foundation was enveloped by it. There were actually signs that it was about to shatter. If his immortal foundation shattered, Huang Jiudi would become a cripple. Just because you want me to admit my mistakes, you want to go against the rules of the Sacred Academy and offend the 9 Emperors' immortal state to death? Huang Jiudi roared. I don't believe you would do something so crazy. Boom! An even stronger destructive might gushed forth. Qin Wentian's sharp claws lifted Huang Jiudi up into the air as screams of agony rang out. Huang Jiudi's immortal foundation was on the verge of shattering. Cracking sounds rang out unceasingly as his immortal energy dissipated unceasingly. The destructive might left thousands of holes in his immortal foundation. I'll only give you 3 breaths of time. Qin Wentian said indifferently. How dare you? Huang Jiudi roared. His eyes gleamed with a blood-red light as the destructive might grew even more intense. Huang Jiudi was truly terrified now. He could already sense cracks appearing on his immortal foundation. As long as Qin Wentian increased his destructive might slightly, this supreme genius would become a cripple. Everyone felt their hearts trembling when they saw this scene. This Qin Wentian was truly crazy. He defeated Huang Jiudi and humiliated him so miserably. Now, he even wanted Huang Jiudi to admit that he was wrong. He wanted to crush Huang Jiudi's mental state, causing Huang Jiudi to be unable to recover from this setback. Naturally, based on the arrogance Huang Jiudi displayed earlier, as well as the words he wanted Qin Wentian to say, Qin Wentian's actions weren't overboard. Because if he was defeated, Huang Jiudi would treat him even more cruelly. What was shocking was Qin Wentian's insane courage. This place was the Sacred Academy and the Sacred Academy had its rules. As for Huang Jiudi, he was a supreme genius of the 9 Emperors' immortal state. He was the younger brother of Huang Wudi, the younger brother of that person. Speak. An ice-cold voice rang out once more. After that, everyone only heard Huang Jiudi using all the strength in his body to roar, I was wrong. This roar seemed to express all the humiliation he felt. As the sound of his voice faded, the destructive energy in Qin Wentian's hands vanished. However, Huang Jiudi's countenance was as pale as dead ashes. The arrogant and conceited Huang Jiudi was defeated so miserably. Not only that, he had to endure such humiliation and he had to say these 3 words. The him now, was he still the invincible Huang Jiudi in the world? Qin Wentian's sharp claws loosened and he reverted to his original appearance. Huang Jiudi's body fell from the sky above the ancient palace and let out a dull thud. Not long ago, Huang Jiudi was thrown onto the ground by Qin Wentian like a pig or a dog. In addition to everything that happened before, everything that happened in this short period of time was probably enough to become a nightmare for Huang Jiudi for the rest of his life. If he was unable to pull himself together, Huang Jiudi would no longer be the Huang Jiudi who was a match for everyone under the heavens. He would no longer have the confidence and courage he had in the past. His confidence and his pride would all be crushed in this battle. However, in Qin Wentian's eyes, it was as if Huang Jiudi didn't exist at all. He raised his head and looked at the expert from the Thunder God Palace, Leba. At this moment, he wouldn't look for Leba to fight. Although the people from the 9 Emperors' immortal state had already retreated, they could return at any time. Furthermore, their formation didn't have the advantage. Hence, he would temporarily remember this grudge. Back then, you must have been as arrogant as Huang Jiudi. However, I hope you will remember the tragedy that Huang Jiudi suffered today. One day, when I really want to face you, your ending might be even worse than Huang Jiudi's, Qin Wentian said indifferently. Then, he looked at Jun Mengchen and the others. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, the group of people left without any reluctance. The so-called battle was just one battle, the battle between Qin Wendian and Huang Jiudi. However, just this battle alone was enough to shock everyone. The might of thunder shone on Leiba's body, as if it wanted to destroy the void. His eyes contained terrifying lightning as he stared at Qin Wendian. If it was before this battle, he wouldn't care about Qin Wendian's words at all. However, in this battle, Qin Wendian's insanity and indifference were enough to make people remember him. Even someone as strong as Leiba's faith was shaken. Just like before, he thought that Huang Jiudi would make Qin Wendian suffer an unforgettable humiliation. However, the ending was completely opposite. For such a person, even if it was Leiba, he wouldn't be able to ignore his threat. Boom! A bolt of thunder slashed through the air. Leiba's proud figure grew even more imposing as an intense battle intent flashed in his eyes. Since he had no way to ignore Qin Wendian's threat, he might as well destroy this threat before it matured. Although Qin Wendian was already very strong and could defeat Huang Jiudi, he was still Leiba, the son of the Thunder God. Leiba was at the 8th level of Immortal Foundation. No matter how strong Qin Wendian's combat prowess was, it was impossible for him to win against him. To think that someone with a perfect Immortal Foundation would actually be even more arrogant compared to Huang Jiudi. Everyone mused silently as they stared at the departing back of Qin Wendian. Although before this, Huang Jiudi was incomparably arrogant and Qin Wendian was only passively resisting. But after the dust settled, everyone could sense what sort of character Qin Wendian was. Royal sister, it seems like it's not like what you've imagined. Several experts from the Shooting Sun Kingdom stood together. That prince spoke to the princess who brought Qin Wendian here. The beautiful eyes of the princess from the Shooting Sun Kingdom flickered, she was truly taken aback. Not only did Qin Wendian not suffer the humiliation she had imagined, he even managed to humiliate Huang Jiudi before leaving unscathed. However, this matter was far from over. What would be waiting for Qin Wendian next? Since he is fine, the grudge between me and him shall be written off. From this battle, not only did I see his strength, I can also see how much he cares about the Evergreen Princess. However, that simple sentence spoken by that elder brother of Huang Jiudi was extremely heavy. Even Leiba chose to give up. What Qin Wendian has to face isn't as simple as another Huang Jiudi. After the princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom spoke, she turned and departed. Since she said that she brought Qin Wendian here, the grudge between them had been settled. Naturally, the debt between them was cleared. After Qin Wendian and the others left, they sped towards the sky-connecting realm in the center of the 4 sacred academies. Right now, this sky-connecting realm was the passageway to the other sacred academies. Qing'er wasn't in this sacred academy. In the sacred academy Qing'er was in, there was a misty ancient mountain peak. On the peak, a young man could be seen sitting in the air. Around him, droplets of rain cascaded down. The young man sat there, allowing the raindrops to land on him, yet they had no way to wet his robes. The ancient peak was incomparably quiet, there were actually very few people here. At this moment, several powerful silhouettes flickered as they flew over. They merely stood at the boundary of the ancient peak before stopping, staring at the raindrops before them with a deep sense of trepidation in their eyes. These figures quietly stood there, nobody dared to disturb the cultivation of that young man. Even in the sacred academy, they were all incomparably powerful cultivators, able to summon the wind and summon the rain, radiating an emperor-grade immortal light. After a few hours, the place became quiet. There was no sound at all. Those people just stood there and watched quietly. What's the matter? Finally, a voice rang out from the ancient peak. It was none other than the young man sitting in the air who spoke. So it turned out that those geniuses who came here had waited for several hours, waiting for this young man to take the initiative to speak. Given their attitudes, it was as though as long as the young man didn't speak, they would never disturb him, even if it was something extremely important. Prince D was injured in another sacred academy. One of them spoke. The young man furrowed his brows, as though he was unhappy. This place was the Tiandao Sacred Academy and Huang Yudi was his younger brother. Although Huang Yuti was rarely defeated and rarely injured, it was normal for him to be injured when he fought with others. Was there a need to disturb him for such a minor matter? As he frowned, the raindrops in the air abruptly sped up, gleaming with sharpness. Those people could sense the unhappiness of the young man. They hurriedly spoke. Back then you said that the daughter of the evergreen immortal emperor wasn't bad. For this, Prince D felt that this was some sort of hint. He wanted the man who liked the princess to admit that she was your woman. The frown on the young man's face deepened. Not bad means not bad. What is he thinking? It's fine if he wants others to admit it. But the problem is, why did he still lose? Isn't he just seeking his own humiliation? The young man didn't seem to care about what Huang Yuti did or if he was injured. What he cared about was that Huang Yuti had done such a thing. Why was he still defeated? That young man was none other than the person who possessed a saint-grade immortal foundation, Qin Wendian of the immortal Qianbian Gate. His cultivation base is at the 5th level and he defeated Prince D. Not only that, he even humiliated Prince D, forcing him to admit his mistakes. That person spoke. Although the young man was frowning, he didn't have much of a reaction. After a moment of silence, he spoke. It's fine for him to be defeated as well. He can temper himself well and make a breakthrough in his state of heart. As for that person who possessed a saint-grade immortal foundation, since he was able to defeat Prince D, it's no wonder he dared to be so arrogant. It's just that to be jealous of a woman, this saint-grade immortal foundation is truly a waste. As he spoke, he slowly stood up. At this instant, the raindrops transformed into incomparably sharp swords that rained down on the young man, terrifying to the extreme. However, immortal light shone around the young man as he leisurely strolled through the rain of swords. When the rain of swords slammed into him, they directly passed through him, unable to injure him at all. The spectators on the ancient peak were all stunned when they saw this scene. But when they thought about who this young man was, they understood. Prince D's misunderstanding caused many people in the Sacred Academy to misunderstand your words. Do you need an explanation? A person asked. Why do I need an explanation? The eyes of the young man flashed, gleaming with sharpness that was even sharper than swords. There's already someone who wanted to humiliate the people of the 9 Emperors' immortal state. In that case, let's turn this misunderstanding into reality. The young man calmly spoke. Chapter 1164. Before the young man exited the ancient peak, the news had yet to spread to the other sacred academies. In the sky-connecting realm, at the location of the sky-connecting immortal rock, the supreme might rankings attracted the attention of many experts every day. On this heaven-span immortal rock, the replacement of each figure symbolized the replacement of the heaven-span world's most terrifying figure. At this moment, the sky-connecting immortal rock suddenly shone with a resplendent immortal light, causing the eyes of many figures on the Tongtian Heaven Stone to turn sharp as they stared at the rock. A bright light shone from the rock. A new member of the Supreme Might rankings had appeared. Numerous gazes turned to the rock with solemn expressions. After that, at a certain location on the sky-connecting immortal rock, a figure gradually grew dimmer and dimmer. How is this possible? Many people had solemn expressions on their faces when they saw this, feeling shock in their hearts. This dimming figure was actually a supreme genius named Li Yufeng. What sort of character was Li Yufeng? He was a supreme genius from the 100 Refinements sect, a major power in the northern regions. He was given the title of Sage Child by the elders of the sect, and the status of a Sage Child was extremely high. Only the leading characters of a generation would have such qualifications. Li Yufeng was only at the 5th level of Immortal Foundation, but he was already given the title of Sage Child. From this, one could very well imagine how outstanding he was. Naturally, this place was the Tiandao Sacred Academy. No matter how outstanding Li Yufeng's status was, geniuses were as common as the clouds in the Tiandao Sacred Academy. Since he could appear on the sky-connecting immortal rankings, it was naturally due to his extraordinary strength. In the northern regions, the 100 Refinements sect and the Dark North Immortal Dynasty had a deep grudge. However, there was a princess of the Dark North Immortal Dynasty who fell in love with this Sage Child of the 100 Refinements sect. The two of them became lovers, and this princess was the younger sister of Princess Kitamura. Her status was extraordinary, and she herself was also an outstanding character. After she entered the Tiandao Sacred Academy, she had many pursuers. Once, there was an extremely powerful pursuer who was at the 7th level of Immortal Foundation. However, that pursuer fought against Li Yufeng in the Sky Connecting Realm and was forcibly refined to death by Li Yufeng, shocking the entire Sky Connecting Realm. In addition to Li Yufeng's status in the 100 Refinements sect, none of his love rivals dared to antagonize him. His name was engraved on the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock in the Sky Connecting Realm. The figures on the Supreme Might rankings weren't the ones with the highest combat prowess, but they were definitely the most outstanding characters in their respective cultivation realms. But now, such a powerful existence like Li Yufeng actually dimmed in comparison to the rest of the Supreme Might rankings. Who would be able to replace Li Yufeng with a cultivation base at the 5th level? The eyes of everyone stared at the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock. This was especially so for those who had personally witnessed Li Yufeng's domineering battle back then. All of them felt that this was unbelievable. They didn't believe that there would be someone who could replace Li Yufeng at the 5th level. Li Yufeng's silhouette finally vanished, transforming into nothingness. A brand new silhouette appeared, imprinting itself onto the Supreme Might rankings. This was a young man with long black hair that draped over his shoulders. He radiated a supreme divine glow, like he had the body of a divinity. He was handsome and exuded an unparalleled aura, officially replacing Li Yufeng. Who is this man? He looks somewhat familiar. What qualifications does he have to replace Li Yufeng? Someone was unconvinced. What sort of expert was Li Yufeng? How could there be someone more outstanding than him at the 5th level? Could it be that Li Yufeng's cultivation base has risen? Someone mused. That doesn't seem right. Li Yufeng hasn't been at the 5th level for too long, and the Supreme Might rankings wasn't too far away from him. It's impossible for his cultivation base to rise again. It's that young man at the Saint Grade Immortal Foundation. He's the male lead of the incident with Chu Qingyi. Someone spoke. At this moment, a dazzling immortal light radiated from the Supreme Might rankings. Li Yufeng has been replaced by someone else. An intense light flashed in the Sky Connecting Realm as countless figures sped towards the direction of the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock. After that, when they saw that handsome young man, there were some who doubted and some who exclaimed in admiration. A figure hurried over from outside the Sky Connecting Realm. When he saw the change in the rankings, he spoke. The rules of the Sacred Academy have changed. As expected, the Supreme Might rankings would be able to sense everything that happens outside the Sky Connecting Realm. And as expected, Qin Wentian has already entered the Sky Connecting Realm. This person had personally witnessed the battle between Qin Wentian and Huang Yudi. Although he was shocked that Qin Wentian would replace Li Yufeng, he could still accept it. After all, Huang Yudi himself was already an extremely terrifying character. Qin Wentian actually jumped levels to defeat him. It's just that if Qin Wentian fought against Li Yufeng, no one knew what would happen. What attitude would Li Yufeng have towards the change in the Supreme Might rankings this time around? Many people mused. At this moment, Qin Wentian had indeed stepped into the Sky Connecting Realm. When the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock radiated immortal light, he actually sensed something in his heart. Casting his gaze in the direction of the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock, he seemed to have sensed something. The Sky Connecting Realm is truly mysterious. Qin Wentian mumbled. The people in the surroundings glanced at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Senior brother, let's hurry up. Jun Mengchen continued leading the way, heading towards the entrance of the Tiandao Sacred Academy where Qing'e was at. As they advanced, before they reached the exit, a figure suddenly halted. Wait. What's wrong? Qin Wentian glanced at the person who spoke. It was none other than Tang Sheng, a 9th-level Immortal Foundation senior brother from the Heavenly Talisman realm. They are coming over. Tang Sheng spoke. After that, Qin Wentian furrowed his brows, as though he could sense the baleful qi gushing over from afar. Disperse, we would rather die in battle than be captured alive. Qin Wendian spoke. The group of them instantly understood Qin Wendian's meaning. All of them dispersed at the same time, moving in different directions. The rules of the Tiandao Sacred Academy had changed. Only one's true self could enter the sky-connecting realm. But maybe it was to prevent the deaths of geniuses in the Sacred Academy. There were some rules in the Sacred Academy. If one died in battle in the sky-connecting realm, they would be teleported out. But once they were captured, Qin Wendian and the others understood the consequences. Retreating without fighting wasn't something glorious. However, wasn't it foolish to be an ant trying to shake a tree? Qin Wendian and the others knew that given how powerful their opponents were, if they fought head-on, they would definitely end up in a miserable state. A group of experts rushed over with extreme speed. Among them, Huang Yudi and the other experts from the Nine Emperors' immortal state were among them. Back then, they had indeed retreated after being threatened by Qin Wendian. However, they came to the entrance of the Sacred Academy where Qing'er was in and sealed this place, as though they were certain that Qin Wendian would definitely come here. Naturally, if it was merely the experts from the Nine Emperors' immortal state, Qin Wendian and the others wouldn't have retreated. They might even choose to fight. But now that the other party had the many greater demons of the White Tiger people, their lineup was truly terrifying. The towering baleful qi that gushed over seemed to be filled with the rage of the White Tiger people. Qin Wendian fled alone in a direction. The direction he fled to was actually the direction of the sky-connecting immortal rock in the central region of the sky-connecting realm. His speed was extremely fast. A pair of great rock wings appeared on his back, and he soared through the air like a true great rock. Far behind him, Huang Wudi was riding on his sword. His golden robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyes gleamed with cold killing intent. His speed was as fast as golden lightning. Only he alone was chasing after Qin Wendian. Under his control, Qin Wendian had no path of escape. Qin Wendian indeed had no path of escape. At this moment, another figure appeared before him. It was none other than the expert from the White Tiger royalty, Bai Mao. Bai Mao was a greater demon at the 7th level of Immortal Foundation. He stood there like a god of slaughter. Halting his steps, Qin Wendian stared at the figure in front of him. His expression was calm, but there was a coldness hidden in his eyes that caused the hearts of others to palpitate. Fleeing. The killing intent in Bai Mao's eyes wasn't concealed at all. He coldly spoke, "After hiding for so long, you are finally willing to scram down the mountain." Qin Wendian was comprehending the Tao in the Sacred Academy. But in the mouth of Bai Mao, it became hiding. Beasts will always be beasts. Although the White Tiger people are proud and arrogant, they are all useless. But now, they actually joined forces with others. Qin Wendian mocked. This White Tiger people joined forces with people from the Nine Emperors' immortal state, yet they were the first to mock him. How laughable. Behind him, Huang Wudi exuded an aura of sharpness as he walked over. He was at the 9th level of Immortal Foundation and had once fought against Jia Nantian. How terrifying was his strength. He stood there, not in a hurry to act. He merely stared coldly at Qin Wendian. Humiliating a prince of the Nine Emperors' immortal empire. He naturally had to pay a price for this. It's Qin Wendian, the person who replaced Li Yufeng on the Supreme Might rankings. This place was the central region of the sky-connecting realm. Many people stared at Qin Wendian as their eyes gleamed with sharpness. More and more experts started to gather here, all of them staring at Qin Wendian. This fellow replaced Li Yufeng not long ago and now, he was already in trouble. It was unknown what combat prowess he would display. Boom! Qin Wendian moved, directly rushing towards Bai Mao. His body glowed with a divine glow as his immortal foundation shone with a dazzling light. With a single strike, the roar of a dragon echoed out, wanting to kill everything in its path. Bai Mao roared in rage, directly reverting to his true form. He once fought against Qin Wendian on the battle platform. At that time, he was at the 6th level while Qin Wendian was at the 4th level. Right now, both of their cultivation bases have risen. Naturally, The leap from the 6th level to the 7th level was much greater, and the increase in his strength was much more terrifying as well. Today, he wanted Qin Wendian to suffer a fate worse than death. When the incomparably huge white tiger's palm smashed down, it was as if a huge white tiger had charged out furiously, colliding with the demonic dragon and directly tearing it apart. Qin Wendian didn't seem to be able to sense how strong Bai Mao was. He stepped out and directly engaged in close-range combat. Each of his attacks were infused with a greater demon innate treasure that contained boundless might. It was like he was truly a supreme greater demon. Bai Mao howled in rage. His baleful qi transformed into boundless killing intent that enveloped this entire space. One man and one demon clashed against each other, causing mountains to crumble and the earth to shatter. The spectators felt their hearts trembling when they saw their battle. This Qin Wendian had such combat prowess. If he could give everyone a little surprise, he would definitely be ranked on the supreme might rankings. Huang Wudi didn't move. He stared at the battle as his eyes gleamed with royal immortal light. With him here, Qin Wendian wouldn't be able to escape even if he grew wings. How powerful! The spectators continued to stare at the battlefield. Occasionally, there would be people who would glance at Huang Yudi with confidence. Qin Wendian's attacks grew more and more violent, blasting Bai Mao into executing the white tiger killing art. Qin Wendian's eyes flashed with a strange light. Today, he would let Bai Mao be complacent for a little while before taking his life in the future. As he thought of this, the power of Qin Wendian's attacks continued to crumble unceasingly under the might of the white tiger ultimate art. Qin Wendian's countenance turned pale as the boundless killing intent slammed into him, wanting to break apart everything. Huang Wudi's eyes flashed. He wanted to act, but it was already over. Qin Wendian's body vanished from sight along with the light from the sky connecting realm. Roar! Bai Mao let out a heaven-shaking roar of rage. Regretfully,